Well, the committee will recommence with its examination of NBN Co Limited. Mr. Roux, welcome back to you and your team. I believe you are here tonight also on behalf of the Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Knox. And, when you've had time to resume your seat, I will ask if you have an opening statement.
I do, Chair. Thank you. I don't know if my colleagues are on screen.
We have a number of your colleagues' names and one face. Mr. Irving is there, I can see.
That's Mr. Irving.
Mr. Whitcomb. But you kick off. I'm sure they will come to light as they are required.
All right, Chair. Thank you very much. So with me physically this evening is Gavin Williams, who looks after our relationship with rural and regional Australia. We've got Brad Whitcomb, who's on the top right of the screen there. Our Chief Customer Officer is joining us from video from Sydney. And from Melbourne, we've Catherine Dyer, hopefully. There's a box for her there anyway, and who's our Chief Operating Officer, and Will Irving, who you can see, who's our Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer. So as always, Chair, we appreciate the opportunity to appear before the committee and obviously answer any questions you have. 2020 was always going to be a milestone year for NBN. But completing the volume rollout has turned out to be more than just a milestone. It's been crucial in supporting the millions of Australians disrupted by the pandemic. And over the last 8 months, a home broadband connection suddenly moved from being a utility to being a lifeline. Australians now have months of experience working and collaborating from home. They know they can see a doctor online. And while you can't hug the grandchildren via Zoom, you certainly can read them stories and connect in a deeper way than by the telephone. And throughout this period, the network has performed very well, with high customer satisfaction, and I do pay tribute to the incredible work of the NBN team, but also to the telco industry, retailers, suppliers and regulators who've come together to ensure that Australians can continue to connect, live and work during a very difficult time. So in addition to managing increased traffic volume across the network, NBN and our retailers stepped in to offer our support to Australians in need. Additional capacity was provided free of charge to retailers. We doubled the average data download limits on the Sky Muster satellite service, and we announced an assistance package aimed at helping RSPs support low-income residential users and business customers affected by the pandemic. Through all of this, NBN still completed the volume rollout on time in June this year. And I want to be clear, though we never said we have completely finished construction, in this business there's always more to do. But the large-scale production machine that in just 4 years made 8.8 million homes and businesses ready to connect has now wound down. And just to reflect on that, since June 2016, on average, every week, 40,000 Australian homes and businesses went from having no access to NBN to being able to place an order with their retailers. And this is an extraordinary performance over a long period, and it required the dedication of very many people to make this happen. On an almost weekly basis, the management team sees challenges, whether in the field, in the supply chain, in resources or in processes. And throughout the last year, we had the added challenges of restrictions on movements of work teams between states, interrupted supply chains, supply of PPE for technicians and new processes for entering homes and working in groups. I've been privileged to see how the people of NBN rise to each challenge and methodically quantify and solve these issues. As Catherine can tell you tonight, in June there are around 100,000 complex premises remaining that we identified in last year's corporate plan. These are premises that for a range of reasons are considered difficult to access or where, because of their cultural or heritage significance, we require a more sensitive design, approval and construction process. We've already made enormous progress with this number, and we are on track to have the vast majority completed by the end of this year. Now, of course, as I've said a few times, there's always more to do. In fact, that's the nature of telecommunications. Networks are always evolving to meet the demand and applications that continue to emerge. So last month in our corporate plan, we unveiled investments totaling $6 billion over the next 3 years, borrowed against future cash flow, to increase the capability, reach and value of this critical asset for the nation. It is clear to me that COVID-19 has accelerated great societal changes that were always going to occur. Changes in the way we live, the way we educate or seek medical help, changes in the work we do and where we do it, changes in the way our homes operate, and changes in how we entertain ourselves. And this brings great new opportunities to new entrepreneurs, to female workplace participation, and to regional and rural Australia. And it brings great responsibilities to all utilities, not least of which is the telecommunications industry and NBN. So these changes mean that demand for higher speeds is likely to emerge earlier than we expected and earlier than our previous plan to invest in network upgrades once the company was cash flow positive would also have to change. So for any business, small or large, higher demand and higher reliance on your services means making a decision on whether or not to invest more to meet that demand. In many cases, not investing and not meeting forecast demand is actually the riskier move. NBN has long talked about the concept of peak funding, and in last year's plan, we estimated $51 billion in debt and equity will be required to complete the build. Now, this concept is useful when you're talking about a construction project that has a clear beginning and a clear end, but it makes little sense when you're talking about an ongoing operational business where investment decisions need to be made on a regular basis. So now that the volume build is complete, new investments need to be evaluated on their merits to see if they improve the business case rather than whether or not they add to peak funding. So right now, market conditions are favourable for us to borrow against our future cash flow to make sensible and prudent investments that not only improve the NBN business case, but provide great outcomes for Australians, the economy and our industry partners. And this has the added benefit of providing a stimulus into the Australian economy with an estimated 25,000 jobs created over the next 2 years as a result of these investments. So to summarise, what is proposed in this corporate plan? Instead of starting an upgrade in 2023, we're starting now. We're taking advantage of historically low interest rates to borrow against future revenue in an investment that has a positive return and strengthens the overall business case. Importantly, we're not moving everyone off FTTN to FTTP. The FTTN network will continue to provide a very good service well into the future. We're simply starting construction now to provide options for higher speeds in eligible FTTN areas should people want them. So each of our initiatives in our corporate plan is consistent with our belief in our purpose to lift the digital capability of Australia, and they also strengthen the NBN business case. We've already turned our attention to the next steps of this plan, including how we will develop the footprint and sequence of fibre upgrades in a methodical way. We're working with retailers to develop eligibility criteria, and we are developing guidelines for the co-development initiatives and the next tranche of our Business Fibre Zones initiative. And we will have much more to say on these points in coming months. So, Chair, thank you for that. My colleagues and I are very happy to answer your questions.
Mr. Roux, thank you very much. Senator Kitching, I believe you are seeking the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Sound check. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Oh, lovely. Excellent. Great. Good evening, Mr. Roux. Could I thank you for your opening statement, and I have to ask the Secretariat if they would mind emailing me a copy of it, if that's possible.
Yes, we will send that on to the Secretariat, Senator, no problem.
Lovely. Thanks so much. Can I just ask you, this afternoon I sent a letter to Minister Fletcher in relation to something you may be familiar with. I've asked a series of questions on notice and just for some detail around the breakdown of your entertainment spend.
Yes.
So I started asking about this on the 31st of October last year. In that, you told me it was $874,000, and I'll be able to give you the QAN number if you need it. But and it was for the entertainment spend from the 1st of July 2018 to the 31st of October 2019. It was $74,000, and I've been in a series of correspondence with Mr. Singh, and to be honest, Mr. Roux, it is just not satisfactory given that in any other department, I can ask PM&C what wine they are serving at a function and they will tell me. So what I want to know is I would like you to answer my question on notice, some of which is still outstanding, and I would like a breakdown of the $874,000.
Yeah, Senator, firstly, if I could comment, I understand why you're asking the questions, and it's an area where we have a travel and entertainment policy. It's an area that actually we do an internal audit on every year, and it's an area where we ensure that expenditure is spent appropriately. And I completely understand why you're asking the question, and it's an important area for me too, because although maybe a small amount of spend in the scheme of things, it goes to a culture of an organisation, and I can assure you, take very seriously our obligations and I'll come to answer your question in a second, but we take very seriously our obligations. In terms of the problem, Senator, with your question is the difficulty of answering it, which is why we've answered the way we have to date. So if I give you,
No, Mr. Roux, the problem is you have not answered my question.
We've answered. We've answered the question, Senator, we've answered the question in accordance with our financial systems and what information they provide you. So let me give you an example. Because I had a look, I'll come back to the February to June spend because I had a look at that myself, following your question, following our response. But between February.
Mr. Roux,
Senator Kitching, just wait for a minute. Senator Kitching, the problem with the video conferencing is that as soon as two people start talking, it makes it very hard for both parties. If you wish to raise a point of order, get my attention. I'm happy to stop the witness and we'll deal with it, but please do not try and overtalk each other. Do you have a point of order, Senator Kitching?
Point of order, and it's not really a point of order because what I'm trying to do is clarify if Mr. Roux is discussing February to June 2020 or February to June 2019. Because I don't. 2019.
I'm discussing
the. Got to 2020.
Mr. Roux, please wait.
I'm sorry.
Raising a point of order for clarification is appropriate, Senator Kitching. So, Mr. Roux, please clarify.
I'm sorry, Senator. I didn't mean to talk over you. It is the video. Apologies, Chair. I was actually talking generally, Senator. So I'm trying to give you an example. So between February and June, there were 6,818 employee expense claims on a range of things with multiple line items. So the ability to answer the question the way you have asked is an absolutely extraordinary task for which we don't have all the information. And so we've answered all your qualms according to our financial records and according to the way information is gathered. We do not gather the information you've asked. Similarly, Senator, there are within the way the system works within expenses is that people put in expense claims on a range of things, and when they put in an expense claim, there is a drop-down box which essentially shows how things should be coded. So within this expense category, there's a large number of items that are not actually really probably entertainment at all, but they're coded as entertainment. So actually to do the analysis that you've asked is firstly, I'm not sure it's possible, and secondly, would be an extraordinary large administration task to do. So we've answered your question according to our records, and we'd be happy to I understand your question, that's why I started there, but if you could narrow it down, or if you could give us a different way, we may be able to answer your question better.
Okay, so I'm just going to let you know, because you may not know this, but other government departments, including the Prime Minister's Department, the Office of the Secretary of the Governor-General, every department, I can go in and say, what did you spend on X function? And they will tell me. Now, I accept that there are different reporting systems, etc. But when I ask when I ask, for example, particular functions, not only will they tell me the cost, they will give me the breakdown of food and wine served. So what I am asking you is, I don't consider NBN to be above, for example, the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet. I do not consider NBN to be above the Office of the Secretary of the Governor-General. I do not consider NBN to be above any other department or agency where I can ask this question and it is answered. And it does not take more than a year for someone to get back, given that Mr. Singh, for example, has asked me questions like, when you say external documents, what do you mean by that? I would say that a dictionary definition of that would suffice. Now, but I want to, no, because you give very long answers and I don't have a lot of time. So what I want to know is, firstly, if you can't track your spending properly, is this why the cost has blown out to $57 billion? And the other thing I want to know is, what I am asking you is, when you are spending money on functions and events held for external stakeholder groups, for example, that help members of the public understand what they need to do to connect to the NBN network, I want to know where you had that function or that event. Was it a morning tea? How many people attended? If it is purchasing, I think, which is in some other response you've given, which is, it could be anything from sandwiches or snacks served during business meetings. I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is where you entertain for external stakeholder groups. I want to know when those functions and events were, when they were, and how much was spent at those functions or events.
So,
Mr. Review, do you mind?
Yes, certainly.
Senator Kitching, I'm just going to, I have a copy of your letter to the Minister in front of me, and that's not what you've asked for in this letter. In fact, you've asked for such extraordinary detail. It's practically every packet of salada and cube of coon on a Friday night drinks, which is totally unreasonable. But beyond that, I think Mr. Rue has already...
Point of order, Chair.
Yes, Senator Kitching, on a point of order. Is this a debating point or a point of order?
I think if Senator Hume had been following the discussion, Mr. Rue said that if I could narrow down the inquiry, it would be helpful. So in the spirit of cooperation, because then I will ask for more detail when he gives me some basic information, I will go to, and I am going to narrow it to what I have just asked for.
So does that mean, sorry, can I just clarify then, Senator Kitching? Can I then rip up point of order?
Minister, just wait. Let Senator Kitching finish, then I'll give you the call.
So what I do want is what I put in points 1, 2 and 3 to the Minister this afternoon. And don't think that this is a surprising ask, because I have been asking for this since October 2019.
Senator Kitching.
Ridiculous.
Yes.
But what I am doing, that's what I ideally want. But it seems to be beyond NBN Co to provide what I really want and what I have asked for on multiple occasions. So what I will do is I will narrow it down, Senator Hume, I will narrow it down to what I have just asked for, which is external stakeholder groups, where I want to know where they were, I want to know when they were, and I want to know the expenditure at those events.
So, Chair, may I clarify then? May I clarify,
Senator Hume, you now have the call.
That if that is the case, Senator Kitching, that the letter that you sent to the Minister this afternoon can be ripped up, and whether it can be, and can I also just suggest that, well, you've changed the terms.
No. In order for Mr.
But beyond that,
you will let Senator Kitching, you'll let the Minister finish. Please do not interact with other members who don't have the call.
Thank you, Chair. But beyond that, Senator Kitching, I think you know full well that NBN, wait a second, Senator Kitching, I haven't finished yet, that NBN has been asked these questions for many, many years, including when Labor was in government, In fact, the Coalition was the ones that started this process. And under Labor, when NBN were not able to disaggregate those numbers, it was in fact a Labor government that said it was considered an unreasonable diversion of resources to do so. So what I would like to do, Chair, I would like to table the answers to question on notice to questions on notice from the NBN Joint Standing Committee in May 2013, questions on notice for budget estimates in 2013. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 versions of questions on notice that have already been answered that are exactly the same questions as Senator Kitching is asking now that were refused back then.
Thank you. You may table those. Senator Kitching, you have the call.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Roux, do you think you are going to be able to provide me with a breakdown? So let's go from 1 July 2018. Do you think you can provide me with a breakdown of the external stakeholder groups, when those for functions and events, when you held those, where you held them, and how much those functions and events costed?
I think that, firstly, I don't know if we would have all that information, and secondly, it would take a very long time to do that exercise.
An unreasonable diversion of
Mr.
resources.
Roux,
I think that's the phrase that Labor used.
Okay, so can I just clarify, Mr. Roux, what is it in the expenditure? So when you go out to an external stakeholder group, so what I imagine is, let me put an example to you. What I imagine is, let's say you're in Bendigo and you're going out to a greenfield site, let's say, and you know that there are people who are buying house and land packages, and you're going to be putting in cabling, or you're going to have NBN is going to be available.
Yeah.
Do you hold a morning tea for those people?
On occasions, Gavin?
Or something.
Let me ask Gavin.
I think it would depend on the particular function.
It would depend on the function.
Okay. So what I want to know is, when you go out to a greenfield site, but you know that there are people there, you're going to be offering the NBN, what I want to know is, do you hold a function or an event, whatever it might be? Maybe it's an evening information session. I just want to know when you held it, where you held it, from 1 July 2018, and I just want to know the cost of it. And we got from there.
So, Senator, the answer to your question is yes, I'm sure on occasions we do. But the important point for me is that whatever expenditure is spent would need to be in accordance with our travel and entertainment policy, which is then approved by not just the manager but also by the accounts payable team who go through that expenditure. Not necessarily, because what you're asking me is to go back and look at historical information for 3 years, go back, 2 years then.
1 July 2018.
You will let Mr. Roux finish.
2 years then. And you're asking me to go back and determine A, is all that information captured in the particular expense claim, and B, is where was it and what happened. And A, I don't know if that's possible, and B, it would take a very long time.
Senator Kitching, you have the call.
Okay, so when you spent $174,000 in 15 months, you actually don't know really. Sorry, $874,000. You actually don't know what you spent that on.
We know the broad terms that have been captured in the general ledger. We know that there are, as I said, Senator, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of expense claims put through for various things that would need to be gone through and analysed, and would all that information have actually been captured in the first place, and that you're asking. And so the challenge is firstly, is it possible? And if it is, extraordinary amount of time that would require to do that. That's why we've answered the questions the way we have, Senator. But I want to stress, I really, really want to stress that expenditure is really important, how it is managed and how it is approved, and that it is spent in the right way, which is why we have policies and we have teams to ensure that expenditure is appropriately spent and approved. So the way that I assure you the culture of the company is very much to protect the money that is spent in the appropriate way on behalf of taxpayers. And that is the culture of this company, Senator. That's why we have a chair. The Senator's gone, I think.
No,
she's back. She's back. That is why we have a travel and expenditure policy, Senator, and that's why we do internal audits on it.
Senator
Chair,
Kitching.
could I have tabled the travel and expenditure policy? Now, did you mention some other policy you've also got, Mr. Roux?
No, the travel and expenditure policy.
Okay, could I have a copy of that and could I have it emailed this evening to me now?
I'm not sure this evening, but we certainly can send you one, certainly, Senator, yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Roux, just so you know, I'm really not going to give up on the breakdown, and I'm sure that Senator Hume has shown you the letter I wrote this afternoon to Mr. Fletcher.
She hasn't.
That's what I actually... Well, maybe I'm happy for you to have a copy of it. That's what I actually want. But what I'm going to do to help you, given that you're now spending $57 billion of taxpayer money, what I'm going to do to help you is when I first started asking these questions, they were in October 2019, and I was asking about the previous financial year. So what I'm going to ask you to do is from 1 July 2019 to 30 June 2020. So we're not looking back into the dim, dark, distant past, as you seem to say that is some historical expenditure. But in that last financial year, what I would like you to do is tell me how many external stakeholder groups you held, when they were, where they were, and how much did each one cost?
So again, Senator, certainly send that question in. The problem we have, I'm not
sending it in to you. I'm not sending it in to you, Mr. Roux. You are taking that on notice.
Okay, but Senator, I'm happy to take it on notice. The problem, I'm seriously trying to help you. There is, as I said to you, there are thousands and thousands of expense claims and thousands of line items, and that information is probably not captured. So the challenge, firstly, do we have the information? Secondly, you're asking us to spend a lot of employees' time digging through information to try and answer your question. And more broadly, as I keep saying, I assure you that our expenditure is very well managed.
I'm not interested in what you think.
Senator Kitching, you've asked the question. Mr. Roux has taken it on notice. Yes. You've gone over the block of time for this session. I will come back to you, but I'm going to give the call to Senator Van.
Sorry, before you move on, Chair, can I just make a correction to the record? Senator Kitching suggested that there was $57 billion of taxpayer money. That is absolutely not correct. There is, in fact, a $49 billion cap of government funding to NBN. So, Senator Kitching, you're sounding really weird and crazy now.
I'm happy.
Can I also just repeat that? Can I also just repeat on behalf of the Minister that it is considered and has been for many, many years, as these questions continually get asked, that it is considered an unreasonable diversion of resources to try and drill down to the level of detail that Senator Kitching is requesting.
You have made that point on the record, Senator Van.
As has the opposition, has the Labor Party when they were...
Minister, you do not have the call. Senator Kitching, you do not have the call. Senator Van has the call.
Dozens of letters from this entity.
Senator Van, you have the call.
Other than a diversion of the resources. That is a
Senator Van, you have the call.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Roux, how much has the government contributed in equity and debt?
Hold on, point of order.
Would the Minister like to retract that statement of can we mute her?
Just a comment
I think it's totally inappropriate. Would you like to
noise.
retract that?
I'll take that back.
Senator,
it's impossible anyway.
Thank you, Minister. That is helpful. Senator Van, you have the call.
I have it now, Chair.
You have the call.
Thank you. Mr. Roux, how much has the government contributed in equity and debt into the NBN, and is that amount capped?
Yes, Senator. The government has contributed $29.5 billion of equity, and the government has contributed $19.5 billion of debt, which is repayable no later than the 30th of June 2024.
Thank you for that. So if this amount is capped, would it be fair to say that you're able to fund additional investments from private debt markets, purely due to the mature state of the rollout and the strong current and future projected revenues of NBN Co?
Yes, Senator. In our corporate plan, we laid out the fact that we would be not just refinancing the government debt by June 24, but we would also fund the additional $6 billion of investments that we've laid out in the plan, on top of the $2 billion that was required as the from the 49 to the 51 a few years ago. We have successfully raised $6.1 billion this calendar year of that, and I'm confident that with the cash flows of the company going forward, and in fact the critical infrastructure nature of the asset that has been built, that we will be able to access the funds that I talked about through the private market, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Roux, are you familiar with the strategic review and the various costing scenarios between a revised multi-technology mix and the revised outlook?
I am, although it predated my time with the company, but yes, I am familiar with this. Well, I could get myself familiar again, but I have read it several times, yes.
If we need to put things on notice, we'll get to that if we need to. So the strategic review said on page 17 that the rollout of the network under Labor's all-fibre approach would cost around $73 billion.
Do we have a copy of it? Sorry, Senator, I'm just getting the document. Which page did you refer to? I'm sorry.
Page 17.
17.
You can please check, but you can take my word for it. With the preamble again.
So scenario 1, revised outlook. Sorry, yes, 73 billion. Yes, that's correct. That's on. Yep.
So knowing what you know now about the rollout of the network, do you think this estimate is say, ballpark accurate?
Senator, I haven't done any work on that particular analysis. As I said, this document predated me. I'd have to go and have I have never done that analysis, to tell you the truth.
Would any of your colleagues like to have a go at that answer, or would you like to take it on notice?
No, they all, with the exception of Catherine, they all were after the strategic review as well. But what I would say is that this document was obviously put forward by the company at that time, and that would have been the analysis at the time.
Sure. Thank you. And you can take that one on notice if you would. Mr. Roux, there is no doubt that, as you said in your opening statement, the COVID-19 has tested the limitations of the network as more Australians now rely on broadband than ever before. How has the approach to deploy the network via a multi-technology mix assisted in getting broadband to more Australians sooner?
Yeah, well, certainly, Senator, what we were tasked with by the statement of expectations that was issued to the company, I think 2014, we were tasked to build out the network as quickly as possible using whatever technologies the company chose to build out a network quickly, as cheaply and as fast as we could. So using that statement of expectations, we therefore use pre-existing technologies, for example, some of the copper network and obviously the pay television network that was in place to enable us to quickly roll out a network. So, for example, fibre to the node is a fast network to build. We set out a plan back in 2014 and 2015. Mr. Wickham is on the call here, and I were tasked by the then CEO to build a plan to build out a network as quickly as we could. And at that time, the plan forecast we'd finish in June 2020. So there's no doubt by using existing technologies, we were able to speed up the rollout, and that enabled us to complete it. We didn't know at the time, Senator, but we completed in time for a terrible pandemic that hit not just Australia, but hit the world. And yes, thank you for your comments, but we've been very pleased with the way the network has stood up to the large growth in data that we saw through the societal changes that occurred because of lockdown, particularly kids being educated at home, people working from home, and businesses being able to continue to operate, and perhaps most importantly, people being able to communicate with loved ones still. So we've been really pleased the way that we have supported the community, not just us, as I said, but in conjunction with the telco industry.
Well, Mr. Roux, I can say hand on heart, since we last saw each other at Estimates, NBN has come past my front door, and I'm now one of your customers. So
thank you.
So thank you for that. Now, would you characterise the recently announced $3.5 billion network investment as a continuation of the multi-technology mix policy?
Well, certainly the statement of expectations that were provided to us required us to not just complete the network as soon as possible and as cheaply as possible, but also, or at least cost to taxpayers, actually, I should say, is the strict term, but also to develop upgrade opportunities for the future as and when demand needed it. And certainly, as we were developing, well, actually before we were developing, but during the development, particularly of the corporate plan this year, it became apparent to us that we were going to see big permanent societal changes driven. Ones that I think were always going to happen, Senator, but was brought forward by the changes in the pandemic. So as we looked forward to what would people be in the future doing education through, or seeing their doctor, or doing group therapy, or indeed where people could work. And I don't think that everybody's going to go, personally, we're going to see everybody go back to office buildings. We will see some, but we will see more people working from home. We'll see more people in regional rural Australia, particularly living and working from there. And because of all that, we saw the demand was going to require us to consider bringing forward that upgrade that was developed over the last few years. So Senator, to answer your question, our task was to build out a network as soon as possible, least cost to taxpayers, and to develop upgrade paths, which the strategic review that you mentioned earlier, I do know, suggested that would occur at the time that the demand was needed. So it's certainly consistent with the strategic review.
Without wanting to put words in your mouth, but paraphrasing, it was safe to say that it was a continuation of the multi-technology mix policy.
Well, it's certainly consistent with the strategic review that was written in 2013 that I have in front of me.
Thank you. Mr. Roux, as you're aware, the former NBN policy under Labor and your predecessor, Mr. Quigley, was to roll out a fibre to the premises network to, I think it was about approximately 93% of premises. This meant junking existing technology, existing network infrastructure, such as the HFC network, which today covers about 2.5 million homes.
Correct.
Would that be correct?
Yes, HFC covers 2.5 million homes, yes.
Thank you. It also meant that fibre to the premises would have been rolled out directly to every home, regardless of cost per premises, or even if the demand for fibre-based speeds actually existed. Would that be an accurate summary?
Well, it's not really for me to comment on policy, and I always try to be terribly careful not to. But the previous management team, if I could talk to it that way, certainly had a plan to build out fibre to the premise to, as you quite rightly say, 93% of the population, and in conjunction with fixed wireless and satellite as well, in the other 7%. And the idea was to build out a fibre to the premise lead-in to every home. That is correct, yes.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Roux, you might have heard some of the background noise about the $3.5 billion network investments as a, and I quote, policy backflip. I want to ask you a few questions about that assertion, if I may. In my view, a reversal in approach would see the company building fibre to every home no matter the cost or the demand. A reversal would also see the complete overbuild of the HFC network with fibre. Now, Mr. Roux, how would you characterise what a reversal in approach would look like?
Well, I haven't considered that, Senator. Maybe I can answer the question from the proposal that we put forward was that we would do a few things. I mean, we would build out for business, which you haven't mentioned in the 3.5, but we would spend a small amount of money on FTTC, and we would bring forward some spend on HFC to provide access to our highest speeds, and that we would build fibre. We would pull fibre from the node, which is so there's fibre built from an exchange building to a node, which is about 10 kilometres approximately. We would extend that fibre to outside people's homes, giving them the opportunity when they so choose, if they choose a higher speed, to order through their retailer that higher speed, and at that point we would then build the lead into the home. So rather than enter into the world of commentators, maybe I'll just answer it that way. That our plan is to build out in the home, and then on demand to build the lead in, which is just over half the cost, by the way, to build the lead in into the home.
Senator Van, if you could start wrapping up this bracket, I'm happy to come back to you, but a couple more minutes and then we'll move on.
That's all I should need. But Chair, I would like to table the document that's being distributed in the electorate of Robertson by Senator O'Neill.
Stephen? Secretary? This is from Senator Van. Thank you.
While that's being handed out, to save time, I'll just quote a part of it. The Coalition's backflip will cost billions of dollars more. It was the NBN plan that the Coalition fought for years. Now it has finally changed its mind, but it's going to cost billions more. Mr. Roux, given your earlier comments on the $3.5 billion network investment, would it be accurate to say that your network investment approach is not a policy backflip, and as such the information in this flyer is wrong and misleading?
Senator, I don't think it's for me to comment on any document, and I'd rather not, regardless of who's distributing documents. I'd rather not comment. I'd rather simply talk to the company that I operate and what we're trying to achieve, which is to build out to customers a service that they need in the future for the digital needs that they'll need for their health and their education and their opportunity to work and participate in the workforce and build new businesses, and that's what I'd like to comment on, if that's all right.
Thank you. Just to wrap that up, you do believe that that $3.5 billion network investment is a sensible approach to giving people what they need when they want it?
I absolutely believe it's a sensible approach, which is why it's in a document that has been prosecuted by the company and approved by government, and it is in my view a way that we can bring high speeds to people as and when they need it to have the needs that to satisfy the needs they have to run their life, and ultimately, Senator, we talk about raising the digital capability of Australia, and the investment plan that we put forward, we believe will assist the nation in its digital needs, and what I think will be a essential part of coming out of the difficulties that we all sadly now face.
Thank you, Mr. Roux, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Kitching, you have the call.
Thank you. Could I just ask, just to very briefly go back, Mr. Roux, I understand you have the travel and expenditure policy. I would like a copy of it. I have just looked on your website. You don't really seem to have any policy documents on your website. I would like that policy, and I would like you I think if you think you can say that you regulate your business and it's all fine and dandy because you've got a travel, whatever, and expenditure policy, what I would point to you this morning is Australia Post. So I would like the question, the limited question I gave you before, taken on notice and answered, and then we will go from there for more detail. Now, could I just ask you, could I ask you who the Chief Financial Officer of NBN Co is?
Yes, it's Mr. Philip Knox.
Where is he?
Where is he?
Yes.
I don't know where he is at the moment, Senator. I can't tell you.
But he's not here. It's not in the estimates room, is he, or online or available?
He's not in the estimates room, and he's not online, no. But I'm happy to answer whatever question you have, Senator, as best I can, or if I can, my colleagues here. We do have 5 of us here, Senator, so let us shoot away and we'll try and answer your question.
Thank you. How long has he been employed at NBN Co?
I believe he started in February 2019.
You believe? Would it be better to have him here and he might be able to tell us definitively?
Well, I can check, Senator, for you.
Thank you.
I am 99% sure that's the right date. Just bear with me 1 second and I will find it. Yes, I was right. He was appointed in February 2019.
Date? What date?
I don't know the exact date, Senator, but I think from memory it was the first Monday, but I could be wrong on that. I think it was the 6th of February, actually. I don't know why I remember that, but I think it was.
Maybe you can, could you take that on notice?
I can take that on notice, Senator, certainly.
Could I ask you, there were multiple requests were made for his attendance today and for prior hearings. They were declined. Why?
I don't know, Senator. It wasn't my... It might have been the 4th of February, Senator, actually. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Senator, we have a lot of... I don't know how many hearings I personally have attended, but we always bring a large number of people who are best answer the questions. And I used to be the Chief Financial Officer of the company, and I think I still have a lot of financial information that I can answer. But we really try and bring people who we think can answer can best answer the questions, Senator, rather than having an overlapping number of people. But I don't recall the requests about Mr. Knox before, but I'll take your word for it.
Well, there were multiple requests were made for his attendance and for prior hearings, and they were declined. So you're going to try to answer that as best you're able. Is that correct?
Answer what? Sorry, Senator.
Answer why the multiple requests for his attendance, why they were declined.
Well, all I can say is, Senator, that we have a lot. We put a lot of executive time into coming to Senate estimates. That's why we have not just me attends, but we have Mr. Williams travel today. We have 3 of my colleagues on the video. They would have been, I assure you, here if it wasn't for the conditions that we're currently living in. And we always bring a lot of executives, Senator, to hearings, and we do everything we can to answer the questions. So we honestly believe we can answer your questions. So.
Okay, but you said you have a lot of financial knowledge, yet Mr. Knox has been the CFO since February 2019. Wouldn't his information be more up to date?
It may be with some things, of course, but broadly, Senator, I think I know I know a lot of. I have the access to the information and typically would know the answers.
Okay. How much is the Chief Financial Officer paid?
It's in the remuneration report, Senator, in the annual report.
And how much is it?
Apologies, Sandra. I'll get there. Do you want the breakdown or what? Do you want it?
I'll have the total. I'd like the total, and then I would like the bonus.
So it's on page 99 of the annual report. So the total is 1.3 million. And the short-term incentive is a total of 414, sorry.
So approximately 1.7 all up.
No. The 1.3 included the 400. So
I see. So 1.3 all up.
Correct.
I would have thought, Mr. Roux, that if someone was earning in that vicinity, that you might want them to come to a Senate estimates hearing.
Well, Sandra, as I said, the issue is can the people at the table answer the questions, and you know our team are happy to, as I said, me and the team are happy to come and answer whatever questions we can. But I don't. If the answers can be answered by other people, the important thing is your questions are answered, is what I'm saying, and that's why we bring a variety of people to these hearings.
But not the chief financial officer of the company.
Again, because I believe we'll be able to answer the questions, Senator. That's why.
Well, he speaks with journalists. I just wonder why he's banned from parliamentary hearings.
There's no banning of anybody, Senator. It's a matter of how we can. As I said, the issue is can we. We're very. I do honestly assure you that because of the company we work in, we take these Senate hearings very seriously, and that's why we do our best to come prepared, and we do our best to come with many of us.
Well, what we're doing with the chair of Australia Post is we'll move a motion to compel his attendance at the spillover day, and that's set for November the 13th. So maybe we'll do that for Mr. Knox as well. I mean, do you have any objections to Mr. Knox appearing at a spillover?
I have no objections at all, Senator. My desire is that we have the people who can answer questions, and I don't want to have extra people next. So that's why we don't have 20 people at the table, Senator. We've people who we think can answer questions and allow other people to get on with their day-to-day task.
Okay. Well, given that you can't answer what other departments and agencies consider
but Mr. Knox
around expenditure on entertainment, I would like Mr. Roux to come Mr. Knox to come to the spillover day on the 13th of November, because I think maybe he might be able to explain why your accounting software is not actually very user-friendly.
Well,
Senator Kitching, Mr. Roux just wishes to make a point.
Mr. Knox will give you the same answer, Senator. Systems are not set up to answer the questions the way you've asked. It's as simple as that. They don't capture every single event and every single sandwich that was eaten. It's not what's captured.
So you don't have a marketing team?
We have a very small marketing team because we're a wholesaler.
How many people?
I'll ask Mr. Wickham to comment on that.
Yep. Am I on there?
Yeah. You are?
Yep.
You are?
Yeah, so I think it's about 15 to 20 people all up in the marketing team.
Sorry, 15 to 20?
Yeah.
Okay. And you consider that a small marketing team?
Well, that includes doing things like all of the direct mail that we send out to prospective customers, letting them know that they need to disconnect their service and that the NBN is an option. Doing our digital marketing above the line, below the line. So relatively small, by telco standards.
So, Mr. Whitcomb, does that marketing team have a calendar of events?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
So, for example, in August, would you know, let's say at the start of the financial year, you might get together, and I know you must because you produce a corporate plan, usually in August of each year, but this year in September, for obvious reasons. But you might sort of in July say, look, we need to market and do events in September in Melbourne, let's say, or in wherever, Darwin. So you must plan that. You must plan out for the year or even for 6 months. I don't want to kind of assume anything here, but you might plan out for events and functions that relate to marketing. Do you do that? Or is it sort of ad hoc?
The marketing that we typically do is outreach to the public to let them know that the NBN is coming. So that would be based on geographic. So if we're deploying new footprint, we're past that now, but if we're letting new footprint, then we come out with notices to customers, letting them know that the NBN has arrived. Eventually they pick up an urgency if people haven't selected a provider and moved off of their existing service. So that can go for 18 months. If we see a need in the market, for instance, educating people as we came into COVID around, get on the right speed plan, make sure you've got a good home setup, then we would look at that as a specific campaign that we would launch, which in fact we did during COVID, to make people aware of what can impact their experience at home. So we do have a rolling series of communications with the public, and then selectively, if we need to amplify that message, we can do that with digital channels or sometimes even with TV commercials.
Okay, so do you have a marketing plan?
Yes, we do.
Oh, good. Okay, that's what I asked you a few minutes ago. So you have a marketing plan, and what I want to know is on that marketing plan, are there events or functions?
I'd have to take that on notice. That would be a very small portion of what we do. Typically what we're doing is much more of a broad reach, so it wouldn't be a very small targeted function such as what you're asking about.
It's just that in your own answer to a question on notice, you use the term external stakeholder group. So I'm just interested in how you communicate with external stakeholder groups.
Maybe I can help, Senator. Can I help, Senator, perhaps?
Sure.
So Brad has one component which is the marketing team. So one of the external stakeholder groups that Brad would operate with is obviously our retailers, and there would be times when there would be events with, I'm sure, putting words in your mouth, Brad, tell me if I'm wrong, but there will be events with our retail partners. So we may have time to communicate with them about new products and new things that's in the market. And that would be largely, I would have thought, Brad's stakeholder group. But there's other groups in the company outside that marketing team. So, for example, Mr. Williams here runs a team called NBN Local. And NBN's Local's job is to communicate with stakeholders, community groups in regional rural Australia. There would be then there's a team called NBN Metro, which is similarly would run events in the more local, in the urban areas. So that may be with schools, or maybe with an aged pension home, or maybe with a healthcare provider, or simply holding an event to assist people with issues they may have, for example. But then there's there may be a media event, there may be I'm trying to think of others, but I'm sure there's 10 other things I could think of. So it's not just with Mr. Wickham.
Okay, so Mr. Roux, given that you're the CEO and it doesn't just sit with Mr. Wickham, would you be able to compile a list of the groups you might have marketing events with?
And we can certainly do that, Senator. Yes, it's broadly what I just told you, but of course we can, yes.
Well, I think you said, and forgive me if I don't have your words correct, but Hansard will tell us, you said that there's probably 10 other things I could say as well.
Yeah, but sure. No, I did say that, but they would be the big ones that I talked about. But they're yeah.
So, Senator Kitching, we are at the evening tea break. We're going to break for 15 minutes. I'll come back and you will have the call again when we come back.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, if we could resume our seats, thank you. That's all right. Senator Kitching, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can. You have the call.
Thank you. Lovely, thank you. Firstly, Mr. Roux, can I just ask, before when we were discussing Mr. Knox's attendance on the 13th of November for the spillover, that to happen?
Subject to any personal events he may have or anything, Senator, of course. But is there a supplemental hearing?
Yes, there will be a spillover hearing.
There is a spillover hearing on that day.
Okay. Friday the 13th, Senator, none of us will be available on Friday the 13th.
You're a lucky guy.
I think the tongue was firmly in cheek there, Senator Kitching. It's okay. You can...
Oh, well, I just don't want to have to move another motion in the chamber.
That's right. I think Mr. Roux has indicated that in all reasonable circumstances, Mr. Knox will be there.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Now, could I just go back to the $57 billion figure, just briefly?
Sorry, Senator, I was looking at... Sorry, could you start that again? I'm so sorry. I wasn't focused.
So could we go back to the $57 billion figure? Now, my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that government equity is $29.5 billion?
That's correct, Senator, yes.
And government debt is $19.5 billion?
That's correct, Senator, yes. At the moment, but that has to be repaid, of course.
Yes, no, I understand.
Yep.
And private debt is $8 billion?
No, Senator. What we said in the corporate plan is that we would be, if I can get the page. The reason is there's a timing issue. So I want to get it right. Sorry. So I think it's best just to read you what we said in the corporate plan.
Sure.
Well, yeah, I see where you're saying that, sorry. So what I was going to say is NBN's expected to raise a total of $27.5 billion. But you're quite right. That's 19 plus the 8 you talked about. But yes, that. Of course, the 19 is also private debt ultimately. Sorry, that's all I was trying to say.
Yes. Okay, so it's $29.5 billion plus $9.5 billion plus $8 billion. And that gives us $57 billion.
Well, yes, but it depends on how you want to categorize. I mean, I said in my opening statement that If you're going to peak cash, I don't think that's the right way to think of it. That's all I was going to say. But it's certainly true that we expect to borrow up to 27.5 billion. Yes. But that is the 6 of that is obviously to invest beyond the initial build being complete.
Okay, but currently we could say 57 billion, according to your corporate plan.
What I would say is that we were on track to deliver last year's corporate plan, as we said we would, and then on top of that, we are going to borrow additional funds to bring forward spend we would have done in the future, which is different from a peak cash funding, if you like, because a peak cash, I don't want to sound semantic on this, I just want to make sure you understand at least how I think of it anyway, that you've got a certain amount of money to build an asset, yeah, and then you've got money that you may choose to invest, and choose is the important word there, to make your if of course you can raise the funds on the market, of course, but you may choose to invest to deliver more for consumers and increase the value of the asset. So the way I think of it is that you've got a build of 51 that we said, and then there's a further investment of 6 billion. Now, that then is funded through the initial build, and the further investments are funded through external debt.
Yes.
So that's why I balk at 57, because it's more to me, you've got an asset you've built and then you're investing to create more value in the future. Sorry, Sandra.
Go ahead, Senator Kitchen.
Thank you. So the minister representing the minister, when she said 49 billion, that's not correct.
I'm not sure.
I don't know where she got the figure from either.
What I think that means is the 29.5 billion of equity and the 19.5 billion of government funding borrowings is 49 billion.
Correct.
And then of that, but that 19.5 billion is then replaced with private debt over the next 4 years to reduce the Commonwealth equity exposure only to 29.5.
No, I understand what you're saying, but you've also just said 51 billion plus the 6.
Yeah. Yes, so that's 49 plus the 2 external funds that we were going to borrow anyway, and then a further 6 billion to invest further into the network.
Isn't that might be why we might need Mr. Knox?
I don't think he would say anything different than that, Senator. Well,
let's see when he comes on the 13th.
Well, he won't say anything different. It's a 49 billion plus 2 plus 6, and then the 19.5 gets replaced. So you end up with the 27.5 borrowing per the corporate plan.
But just per your corporate plan, it's 29.5, it's 19.5, and it's 8.
Yes, that's correct. And we say that on that page.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Good. Thank you. That's 57. Thank you.
But
now, can I other parts of the corporate plan? So I want to go now to. I want to compare an estimated average revenue per user figure between 2020 and 2021. So now, I just want to be clear. The 2020 corporate plan was released in August 2019. The 2021 corporate plan was released September 20, and I understand it's about 3 weeks late because of the coronavirus pandemic. Is that right? Is that why it was late?
No, it wasn't actually late, but let me explain. Normally, the corporate plans are due by the 31st of August, as you're saying. Because of the pandemic this year, I believe I'm going to say the Minister for Finance, but certainly the government enabled all GBEs to complete by the end of January, actually. But but we still delivered ours in September. So it was later than last year, but it was earlier than was required. Several months earlier, actually, than was required.
Okay, well, thank you. So the estimate is based on dividing total revenue for a given year by the total number of activations and converting that revenue per connection per month. So you can tell me if I'm wrong. So what I've done is I have divided the revenue in each year by the activation, by the number of activations, and that gives you the average revenue per user. Oh, sorry, and then I've divided by 12 to give me a monthly amount, and that gives me the average revenue per user. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, tell me.
For a whole pile of reasons. So firstly, if you're dividing it by activations, you've got to know an activations per month, because activations can spike. The average will be different for every single month. Secondly, what we always report on is residential average revenue per user, and the reason for that is that a business connection can vastly vary depending upon what sort of business. So, to give you an example, Senator, if you have someone in their home is different than an organisation with say 4,000 employees with multiple sites, or is different from a satellite connection, or is different from NBN on a Qantas plane. So in other words, business revenue is not something that really pertains to an average revenue per user per se. And then on top of that, there are other elements of revenue in our revenue line. For example, a tech choice, or for example, licenses we may be paid for using the HFC or the FTTN network and so on. So there are or developer fees that we may receive. So there's a stream of revenues which are not pertain also to an average revenue per user. So unfortunately, your calculation it won't work.
Okay, so can I just ask you? So I want to compare, as I said, the estimated average revenue per user figure between 2020 and 2021. And for the purpose of comparison, let's call the average revenue per active connection. We can do the comparison between the 2020 and the 2021 corporate plan figures. Can we do that?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're. Keep going.
Okay.
I'm trying to follow.
I'm pretty sure you know what no.
No. Go on.
Otherwise, we might need Mr. Knox here. Now, can I just take you through? So, what I want to ask you. Let's say in the 2020 corporate plan, we have $44 in financial year 2020, have $50.40 in financial year 2021, $55.60 in financial year 2022, have $57.20 in financial year 2023. Now, what I want to ask you...
Sorry, Senator, I don't follow any of those numbers.
Okay.
Where do you get them from? Can you tell me?
So what I have done is I've done a calculation where I have divided the revenue by activation and then divided by 12 to get a monthly figure. And what I'm asking you to do is I'm going to use that method to both corporate plans.
Excuse me, Senator Kitching, to be fair to Mr. Roux, to ask him to do the mental arithmetics on the spot in accordance with a formula that you have worked out, when he's already pointed out that there are some complexities that perhaps you haven't taken into account, I'm not sure is fair. If you'd like to put it on notice, I think that would be a far more appropriate way for them to understand your thinking and to come back with an informed answer. Otherwise, we'll have lots of scratchings and calculator button presses and not necessarily a useful use of the Senate's time.
Okay, I'm happy to do that, Chair, but I think Mr Roux, as the former Chief Financial Officer, understands what I'm doing. But what I want to put to you is essentially what is happening between 2020 and 2021 is that, in fact, the revenue is dropped. So let's take financial year 21. You in at 4.9.
What? Sorry,
What's the
Sandra,
table?
Which plan? Where did you get 4.9 from?
I'm in the 2020 corporate plan.
The 20. Yes, I have that in front of me. Yes.
Right, great. And then I'm in financial year, I'm just going to take as an example, financial year 21.
Yes.
And and your revenue is at 4.9.
So I think, are you asking me the revenue in
What I'm asking,
are you asking me this, Senator? If I can try, maybe I can ask.
Sure.
Can I ask you a question? Is that allowed?
Yeah, you most certainly can.
Are you asking me? There was 4.9 billion revenue in the fiscal year 21, in the 2020 to 23 corporate plan, and this year's plan has 4.5 billion. And are you asking me why that has fallen? But you recognise that some of that is lower activations. Is that what you're trying to do?
No, well, actually, in financial year 21, you've got revenue of 4.9 compared to 20. So in corporate plan 2020, so the projection for financial year 21 is 4.9 billion.
Yeah.
In corporate plan 2021, financial year 21, it's down to 4.5 billion from 4.9.
Yes.
Right? But activations, you estimate, are going to go from 8.1 to 8.2.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, let me just confirm that. Yes.
So,
yes, that's right.
Yep, good. So what I want to ask you is, for example, we've been told, and I don't have a copy of your opening statement yet, and I would like it if you could take.
Can I ask? Have you got that now?
Yes, it has been emailed, I understand,
Yeah,
Senator.
you should have that now, Senator. Sorry.
Okay, but we're told that demand for high speeds is going up because of coronavirus. So why is the revenue per user, why has that revised down compared to last year's corporate plan?
But again, you're using average revenue per user in a holistic sense that I don't think pertains to how we run the company, in the sense that we have a residential average revenue per user, we have a business revenue, and then we have other revenue items. So you're applying a more general term to average revenue per user, which is not actually. There's a different way of doing it, Senator. I'm just pointing that out to you. But I'll still answer your question.
Okay, so can you tell me how you do it?
Yes, you would take on a monthly basis what would be the revenue from residential customers, and you would divide that by the average number of customers on the network in that particular month, and you do that every single month, and then that evens out over a whole year. But you would just do that for residential. We don't do that for business because, as I probably badly explained earlier, but one business is not equal to another. So therefore, you may get one connection that's at a high value because it covers maybe multiple sites or a large number of employees. And you're comparing that to one connection, which might be someone working in their home, or you're comparing that to a NBN being used on a Qantas plane, for example. So they're apples and oranges.
Yeah.
But okay, I'm only trying to explain average. Let me answer your question, though. What we've seen in this corporate plan compared to last, a few things. Yes, you're right. There's a small movement in average number of users, but that's not the main driver at all. It is, if you may or may not recall, Senator, but we put in place some initiatives at the time of the COVID pandemic really hitting Australia, and we effectively put in place what we called a CVC boost at 40%, which effectively gave retailers additional capacity at no cost, and that had an impact on our revenues. We also implemented various relief measures to support the community, and that also had an impact on our revenues. We also have seen, as you can imagine, a softer business market and therefore a slowdown in business revenues. And finally, we put a couple of things. We put some pricing changes through last year that still will get us to long-term average revenue, but ensured that we worked with our retailers and also made sure we worked for consumer benefits to have pricing that actually provided good customer experience as well as drove our revenues longer term and supported the retail industry. And we've also are in this plan introducing new rebates for service delivery, which goes, although it's a cost, it goes against revenue. So there's multiple reasons why, and this is normal in any plans, by the way, Senator, year on year, but that is why you're seeing slightly lower revenue in 21 than 20 compared to plans.
Right. So can I ask you, Mr. Roux?
Yeah.
Activations in financial year 21 is up, but total revenue is down.
Yes, but again, you got to go to average. You got to actually go to the average number of connections during the year, and the average number of connections between plans are not materially different. The main changes is what I've just described, which is that softer business revenue, the various COVID relief measures we put in place, the pricing changes we put through last year, and some rebates for service delivery. There is a very small impact on the average number of connections during the year. It's not material at all.
Senator Kitching, I've let you have a very long chunk this time. I'm going to go to Senator Van, and then I'm happy to come back to you.
Thank you.
Senator Van,
Thank you, Chair.
You have the call.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Roux, I've got some questions about the business fibre zones, if you need to get
Yes.
the right people up. But I'll start with you. They might be most appropriate to you, but
I'll probably defer to Mr. Wickham on this, Senator Van, but why don't you start with me and we'll see how we go.
Terrific. Mr. Roux, what economic benefits will Australia reap from NBN's investments in business fibre zones?
Well, from an economic point of view, there's a couple of things. Certainly in the short term, we will see jobs being created through the construction work that Catherine and her team will be delivering. But more broadly, as I said in my opening statement, Senator, we see a lot of societal changes occurring, but also the need for small business to increasingly digitise. We know from research that we've done that we did it over about 1 million small businesses, actually. It was done for us by Alpha Beta. That the more the small business spends on technology, the greater their revenue and greater their employment growth. And actually, the spend on internet, the top quartile compared to the bottom quartile, you basically see a 5%, it's north of 5% growth in both revenue and employment. And it's a personal view and maybe outside my direct area, but I do think that small business will see us coming out of the economic challenges we have by building businesses, by employing people. And to us, small businesses is going to be more and more the engine of the economy. So from our point of view, we see an emerging demand for more business-grade services, and we also see an underserved market today whereby businesses either haven't economically been able to afford, in this case, symmetrical speeds, or there simply hasn't been fibre in their area. So for us, Senator, we see a direct, immediate job creation, but longer term, this will help small and medium business be more productive, sell our goods and services across Australia, create new jobs, indeed sell goods and services internationally, and importantly, be able to use a lot of the productivity tools that come from the cloud these days, whether they be payroll services or marketing service or databases that you can serve your the customer relation. It's late at night, Senator. Sorry, customer relationship management suite of services you can use from the cloud. So, we're excited by the initiative for us, but we also think it'll bring great benefits to the nation.
Thank you. And you're dead right, it's late at night, especially your fourth one in a row, as all my
Well, it's my first one in a row.
And we got next week as well. How many business fibre zones are in regional, rural and remote Australia? And on top of that, how will pricing in regional Australia compare with that in, say, metro or CBD areas?
Yeah. Well, again, I know the answer to that, but I've done a lot of talking. Gavin, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so we'll be releasing 85 business fibre zones in regional Australia, which will enable us to support in excess of about 250,000 businesses in regional Australia. I think the second part of your question was what does business fibre zones do for regional Australia? We're really proud of what this announcement and what this program does for regional Australia. In the past, business, might have been in, whether it's in Devonport or Casuarina, they'd be paying more at a wholesale level for a business-grade service than if you were in Martin Place in the CBD of Sydney. It's as if the pricing for Central Business District business services had a ring of hedges around CBDs, and in regional Australia you were forced to pay more. What we've done in business fibre zones is remove that layering of pricing so that businesses, as I said, from Devonport to Casuarina, from Bunbury to Port Macquarie, can get access to the same commercial wholesale terms as in the CBD of Sydney. And it's part of what NBN's trying to do to support the enablement of globally competitive regional towns and cities. And it's not just the CBD of Port Macquarie or the CBD of Darwin. It's swathes of, for example, in the Darwin area, Darwin, Casuarina, a large number of businesses will be able to access that pricing. And to access the service, Senator, we need to build fibre from the business location to the NBN network. In the past, a business may have had to have spent thousands of dollars on that. In business fibre zones, NBN will cover the cost of that fibre build so that we really can support businesses in regional Australia to unlock the innovation that, as you know, is so inherent in businesses in our country, and support that innovation and what I hope we'll see a regionalisation of our economy.
Senator Mackenzie is bursting to ask a follow-up question on the regions. If you don't
I know you'll understand.
Her or Perrin might.
Thank you. I just the two areas you mentioned, Mr. Williams. As someone whose party actually represents the regions, I wouldn't consider either of those regional areas. They're actually suburbs of cities. So I think Senator Van would be interested in Wycheproof. Senator Fawcett would be interested in Whyalla. Catherine, we're really interested in our government's commitment to giving that connectivity to regional Australia, which extends hundreds of kilometres from our capital cities, where we really do have an entrepreneurial spirit, and small businesses are the backbone of our communities, and I think our government recognises they're going to really drive our recovery. What's their experience and the pricing, I think, was the question Senator Van had, for those regional capitals and those vibrant country towns, which will drive our COVID recovery.
Oh, well, I mean, in the 85...
Because the ones you mentioned actually are suburbs of capital cities.
But still, in the past, hamstrung by commercial arrangements from wholesale business services that are more than the capital cities of our state capitals. But as you say, the 85 business fibre zones provide access with $0 fibre build and this CBD zoning that I talked about. That doesn't cover all of regional Australia. As part of this announcement, we've allocated $50 million to work with local councils, state and territory governments and business groups to expand the number of business fibre zones elsewhere, and bigger business fibre zones and more of them.
I'm sure Senator Van will be very happy. He's got a strong affinity with the northeast and central Victorian regional communities.
Senator Van, you have the call.
I do indeed, and thank you very much, Senator McKenzie. Much appreciated. So, to either of you, is it fair to say that these investments, I'll go back a step, given what we've seen during COVID is many people, it seems, are looking out to the regions, being able to work remotely, people working to the region. Is it fair to say that these investments will aid in decentralising Australia's economy?
I take the view, yes, indeed. I mean, it's if you add to that the investments that NBN announced across the board in the development of our fixed line networks, the continued funding to maintain the performance of our fixed wireless networks, and here an opportunity for businesses to prosper, or at least doing our bit to support the businesses being able to prosper in regional Australia. All of those items combined, I mean, it's a multivariate equation that to drive increased livability in regional Australia, more jobs in regional Australia, to make people ask themselves the question: would you rather be in a traffic jam on the Sydney Harbour Bridge or enjoying a marvellous view of a rolling paddock?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. So what will your business fibre zones mean for Australia's healthcare community?
Brad, do you want to talk
Maybe
to that?
Mr. Rue? Sure.
Maybe
So part of this is we have identified 14 what we're characterizing as health precincts, which fit within the business fibre zones. So similar to what Mr. Williams was talking about, this allows for $0 fibre build to be able to provide that access not only to hospitals that might be in that area, but also to doctors' parks and medical facilities, research, et cetera, in that area. And in addition, again, down into that CBD zone pricing, which can be 2/3 cheaper than what it was prior to the business fibre zone. So it's the $0 build. It's having a much lower ongoing cost of service. Of course, we're expecting retailers will pass most of that benefit on, most or all of that benefit on to the medical facilities in those areas. So it creates a very compelling opportunity to gain access to those high-speed symmetrical services, which doctors will be needing to be able to move, as Mr. Rue talked about, whether that's accessing the cloud, whether that's moving large medical records, imaging, et cetera, back and forth, to really open up that opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wickham, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Kitching, are you still with us?
Now, hello. Now, Mr. Rue, I just wanted to ask just a few more questions. I am going to put in a quan and take you through how I've arrived at the average revenue per user. But what I wanted to ask you is that if you were, let's say the target, the target from your corporate plans, just take financial year 21, is that the revenue is 4.9 billion. In corporate 2021, the revenue is 4.5.
Yep.
I noticed there's a bit of a pattern. I've lost the table, so I can't see Mr. Roux anymore. But what I've also done is I've looked at your corporate plans going back from 2017 and to 2021, and there is a pattern, and I would like to comment on this. There is a pattern where there is a decrease of revenue forecasts from existing corporate plans.
Yeah.
I can't see you, Mr. Roux, but if you're able to comment on that, that would be good.
Sorry, have you lost your picture, Senator, have you?
I've lost the picture of you.
Maybe that's a good thing for you. So, Senator, let me start with 2017, and I've been asked this question in a large number of hearings over the last year or so, but I'll go through it again. So in 2017, no, I'm happy to. In 2017, the company made two big decisions. One was to pause the sale of HFC, and that was done, I believe, I'm going on memory here, but I believe it was November of 2017. And we also decided to introduce bundling of a slightly different pricing strategy, which was to what we call bundle up CVC and AVC together. And the intention of that was to move people, was to encourage, that's the wrong phrase, I'm sorry, to encourage the retailers to more easily sell the 50 speed tier. That same year, by the way, just for your interest, we also decided to increase the capacity that we were putting in the fixed wireless network to give people a better experience at busy hour than they were getting at that time. And those three decisions led to us increasing what we were talking about earlier, the peak funding, from the 49 billion that we always had a range, but which was basically the best estimate at that time, to increase it to 51 billion. And that was really for those three decisions that were of almost equal financial impact. The first two I talked about, the delaying of the sale of HFC, we continued to build it, but we withheld from sale for a period of approximately, on average, 9 months. That decision and the decision around adjusting our pricing, which was a better outcome for consumers, both had a revenue impact, and therefore, though, the revenue was impacted going forward. So that's an important point to note when you think from that plan forward. On top of that, Senator, we always had in our plans what we called a contingency, and we built a contingency back in the first plan that I was talking to earlier that Mr. Whitcomb and I were responsible for building. I think from memory it started on around about 4.5 billion contingency and gradually released, that contingency got released over the period of the plan. That contingency was not just against cost, it was also against revenue. So when you consider our plans over years, firstly, every single plan changes. Any company all companies produce long-term plans. Every company that I know, with the exception of NBN, releases forecasts for 1 year. We, of course, put out 4-year forecasts. And those plans change over time. So the broad answer to your question is that over the period, firstly, there was big decisions made back in 2017-18 year. Secondly, we had contingencies which we hoped we wouldn't use, but we guessed we would. And thirdly, plans always change. But what is important is that our plan was always to build out a network to the whole of Australia by 2020. And we achieved that, Senator, and we'll continue to, we'll continue to chase the revenues that we have in our plans. But plans always change over time, Senator. But that's a broad answer to your question.
Well, that's probably not the question I was going to ask, but that was very interesting, because what I was going to take you through was, and obviously when you say the delay in the sale of HFC was in November 2017, that would be incorporated in the 2018 corporate plan, wouldn't it?
2018 would have been released.
The
2018 corporate plan would have been released in August 17.
So November 2017 is after August 2017, so it would be in the 2018 corporate plan. But anyway,
the 2018 corporate plan would not have assumed the HFC pause, no.
So I want to go to that and the assumption of plans, because I agree with you, plans always change. But, I mean, well, you can put a plan in place and it can have projections, and those projections can change. But what I want to take you through is when I go to the 2017 corporate plan, the revenue is at 0.9 billion. In the 2018 corporate plan, it's at 1. 2019, it's at 1. 2020, it's at 1. 2021, it's at 1. In financial year 18, in corporate plan 2017, I'm looking now at financial year 18. Oh, look, I can go through these. I'm going to give this to you later. I'm going to put this in a quan because I do want you. But what I want to do is let's take financial year 2020. The 2017 corporate plan, revenue is targeted at 5 billion. In the 2018 corporate plan, 2018 corporate plan, it's at 4.9. 2019 corporate plan, it's at 3.9. 2020 corporate plan, it's at 3.7. And the 2021 corporate plan, it's at 3.8. So what I want to know is, you've got these drops. Why is that the case?
That's what I was trying to explain to you earlier, Senator. The plans that you refer to, the 5 billion, has a couple of things in there. Firstly, that does not have the pricing changes that I discussed. It does not have the HFC pause assumed that I discussed, and it also has contingencies. So if you have a look in those plans, you'll see that there were contingencies put in those plans for unexpected events that may occur in any, what ended up a 10-year build of a network from 2010 to 2020. So it's normal to put contingencies in this case, where you are building a plan, you put in your best estimates of when you will build and when you will connect people. Those flow through to revenue streams that you assume you will receive. It also flows through to your consideration of the retail market at the time, the consumer market at the time, and particular average revenue per user you may achieve, and you also have to factor in customer experience. So when those assumptions change, you know that will have an impact, so you build a contingency. Now, I did say to you, though, that when we paused HFC and when we introduced the new pricing, we did increase the peak cash funding by 2 billion, and a large portion of that increase was because of delays of revenues coming as between plans. Again, Senator, this is all very normal business practice, and I go back to when we built our plans back in 2014 and 15. There's a couple of things we said. We said we'd finish the build in 2020, and we said the peak cash would range between 46 and 56 billion. And as I said, we ended up at 51 billion. And, Senator, that's something that, I and the team are very proud of us achieving. The actual in-year numbers will always change between plans. What I can tell you one thing with certainty, that the numbers that in this plan will adjust over time. They always do. They could go up, they could go down, they could go sideways, but every plan, there are new events occur and they change.
Yes. And if you were an ASX listed entity, you would be reporting to the market on a very regular basis.
We would, and Senator, we would. And we report, so just on that, if we were an ASX company, what we would do is we would report half yearly, like we do. You put out an annual report like we do, and you would put out a one year guidance, which will be a range typically of a couple of items. We don't do that. We put out 4-year best forecasts that we see. Not a guidance, not a range, but 4-year numbers that we put out. So we do more actually than any ASX company do by a long way.
So you don't do a half yearly. So there's
We do.
There's an annual.
We do.
There's an annual corporate plan.
There's an annual corporate plan which again goes out 4 years, which an ASX company doesn't do. It will put out a 1 or 2 statements about guidance for the next year. We produce an annual report, like as good as any listed company's annual report, and we also put out a half-year report, again, just like an ASX company does.
Okay, so what I want to know is let's take year 2021, a $5.4 billion forecast in the 2018 corporate plan, post-rollout year when, revenue should have been more stable, I would say. You've revised down to 4.5 in the 2021 corporate plan. So it would be pretty hard for NBN to miss the $4.5 billion target, wouldn't it?
It would be. It would be hard. There is.
Yeah. So what I want to know,
it would be hard.
You don't. That's okay. What I want to know, because I do want to finish and pass to one of my colleagues, but what I do want to know is how does this affect the bonus structure of executives? Because if it is very, you've just said, for the NBN to miss the $4.5 billion target, you're going to get a bonus, and so is your executive team.
No, I said it would.
What I'm wondering is that the 2018 corporate plan, when financial 21 was projected at 5.4, in 2021 corporate plan, it's dropped by nearly $1 billion, and you've just said it's going to be very hard for you to miss that. I want to know what that does and whether that is done
there's a whole
for an ease in achieving executive bonuses.
There's a whole range of things that can impact that revenue, Senator, a whole range of things, not least of which the uncertainty in the economy today, the number of connections that we've got to get on the network, and also the work that we need to do with retailers around pricing. So I would put to you a couple of things I'd state with that is that when you look at the growth of this company over the last few years, when you look at what I said in the opening statement around actually making 8.8 million homes ready to connect in 4 years, or 40,000 a week, I put to you that is a very big target. I put to you that over the years that our connection growth, the number of subscribers on our network is substantial year on year. And Senator, when going to your question, maybe I didn't explain my answer very well, but between those corporate plans, you had changes in specific changes in around the HSC and around pricing, but you also had contingencies in the plan, which
no, you talked about
so they all go to the very point that you're making around revenues. The fact of the matter is that we've completed a network when we said we would, with the dollars that we said we would, Senator. Now, in terms of short-term incentive arrangements. They range upon. So if you take again, it's in. If you like, if I can refer you to the annual report, please.
Yes.
I'll have to find it, so bear with me, please, Senator. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I know you're probably running out of time, so I'll try and find it quickly.
Thank you.
Just while Mr Rue is looking up that, there is less than a minute left in Senator Kitching's time, so I'll go to Senator McMahon and then we'll come back to...
Sorry, Senator, I found it. I'm sorry for using your time up. If you go to page 97 of the annual report, you'll see the structure of last year's short-term incentive plan, and it's based upon, and the incentive plan is of course at-risk pay for not just executives, it's actually for thousands of people in the company. So it's based on 5 criteria really. The first is what's called the NBN controlled end user customer experience. So this means how well do we operate the network and how well do we operate from an operational point of view. So it's measures like right first time, mean time to connect, mean time to restore, node health, modem resyncs, network availability. It's things like that goes into that metric. There's then a second metric is called customer advocacy, which goes to effectively what end customers, so people in the home or people in the business, their satisfaction levels around the internet services, not just NBN, but around the industry experience, and also in there are TIO complaints. So the end, in other words, the tail, the people who are actually putting in a complaint. Then the third component is premises ready to connect. The fourth component is premises activated, and the fifth component is EBITDA. So the 5 components go into the short-term incentive plan. They're based upon, like all short-term incentive plans, they're based upon that particular year's performance, not just financial. In fact, financial was a small part of it. In fact, it's more on the customer experience and more on the completion of the build.
Thank you, Mr Rue. Chair, I have finished. I am going to put some questions on notice, and I might also write to the Minister to seek a private briefing. I'm not sure he'll give me one, but I will ask, and with the NBN CEO. But I've finished this line of question.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Kitching.
Before we move on,
yes.
Senator Kitching used some pretty bewildering numbers there that she'd calculated herself. I'm wondering whether, Senator, you would table your calculations that you presented a little earlier.
Is put them,
just so the rest of us understand them as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure that you were listening, but what I said was I was put them in a quan, and that's what I'll do.
Thank you, Senator Kitching. Thank you, Minister. Senator McMahon, you have the call.
Thank you. Mr Rue, the company's internal rate of return is expected to increase from 3.2% in last year's corporate plan to 3.7% in this year's.
That's correct, Senator, yes.
That's a fairly substantial rise. How has the $4.5 billion network investment plan contributed to this improved financial outlook, and how important is the demand-driven aspect of the investments to the underlying financials of that plan?
Yeah, okay. So we're so you know this, but just so again, so you know how I think. We're a government business enterprise. So that means obviously our shareholders are two government ministers, but on behalf of obviously the Australian people. And then we're a business to the extent that we've got to run a profitable business. So we implement government policy owned by the Australian people, but we also run a business. So having built a network, my job now is to not just ensure that we have, my job, I shouldn't say it that way, our job as an organisation is to ensure that we continue to deliver upon the government of the day's policy, but also ensure that we increase the, if you like, the value of the asset. So what our proposed it's no longer proposed, what our investments that's in the corporate plan do is it provides higher ability for residential customers and for some small businesses to, on demand, choose higher speeds. So what effectively this plan does is it through the investment of the $4.5 billion incremental investment in network in this plan enables us to provide services to the community as and when they need it and as and when they demand it. By building out the way we are on demand, it means the capital is spent when we know the revenue is going to be generated. And over a long period of time, that investment gives a good return on that 4.5, that additional revenue stream, and indeed in some cases reduced expenditure, will give us a good return on that 4.5 billion. So not just the higher speeds, but also the business fibre zones the Senator Van was asking about earlier. And the other thing that Mr Williams is very excited about, which is the co-investment with state governments, is also, of course, designed to ensure that we get a rate of return on that as well. So a combination of all those, Senator, means that we will have higher revenues, lower costs going forward, which will give us a return on that $4.5 billion investment to the extent that we then build out the IRR from 3.2 to 3.7, as you quite rightly point out.
Thank you. Could you tell me how important was the decision to change from an all-fibre fixed line build to a multi-technology approach, which uses existing infrastructure to the extent possible in terms of the speed of the rollout, as well as financially for the company?
Well, you're asking me a policy question there, so again, Senator, I'm sorry, I'll simply go to that. From my point of view, I was asked with my colleagues to build out a network using existing technologies with least possible cost to taxpayers in the fastest way possible. And to enable us to do that, we used a multi-technology mix. But more broadly, on policy front, I'll leave it to senators to discuss that.
But you think overall using that approach made it faster and cheaper?
Well, we certainly chose to use fibre to the node and to use existing HFC to build out as quickly as we could.
Thank you. How does the $2.9 billion investment to take fibre deeper into the node network build upon rather than displace the investment that has already been made in the fibre to the node network?
Yeah, and thank you for that. This is a really important question, actually, that I think certainly we want to make sure everybody understands. We're not replacing the fibre to the node network tomorrow. What we're doing is we're building fibre deeper into neighbourhoods to enable then those who choose to order greater speeds than they could have got under the fibre to the node network. I think, Senator, I don't really think technology. I more think what does consumers need and what are consumers willing to pay for. And to the extent that there would have been customers in the fibre to the node footprint today who would desire and be willing to pay for higher speed, what we're doing is enabling more of them to get that. However, the fibre to the node network, as I think has been proved during the COVID pandemic, is providing really great services to Australians today, and it will provide great services to many Australians over the next decade, I'm sure. So we're not tearing down the fibre to the node network. What we are is building fibre deeper in a capital efficient way to enable people to order higher speeds when they want those higher speeds than they can get on the existing network. So now we're expecting, of course, that there will be a movement to higher speeds over a period of time. So we do think over a period of time more and more people will choose that option and choose higher speeds. But fibre to the node will stay in existence for a long time. So I think the other important point to make is that the investment we've made in fibre to the node has generated revenues, and that revenues in the next couple of years will have paid back the investment that we made in fibre to the node. So in that sense, it's a capital efficient way of continuing to build.
It's been said that the revenues generated from the fibre to the node network will have already paid for that network by the time this investment plan is completed in 2023. Can you please elaborate on that and also clarify whether the fibre to the node network or those parts of it where you plan to build out a local fibre network will be decommissioned in 2023, or will it continue to operate into the future?
Yeah, so we started building fibre to the node 2016, Gavin, I think it was. We launched it. Is that right? I think it was 2016 we launched fibre to the node. So we've been building that out over over those years. Because we were able to launch it in 2016, it started to generate revenues, and obviously incurred some expenditure as well. But those revenues between that period to sometime in 2022, the revenues less the incremental costs on that network will have paid for the capital expenditure that we put in the ground to build fibre to the node, if you like. So we'll have paid back, that portion of the investment will have paid back itself by them, let's say 2022. Don't completely hold me to that, but it's around that period of time. So that was part A of your question. Part B of your question, Senator, I think was then that would that then lead to the FTTN, the fibre to the node network, being decommissioned in 2023? The answer is no. In our plans, we're expecting around about 400,000 customers will have chosen, of the 2 million, will have chosen to have upgraded their service to a fibre to the premise by 2024, let alone 2023. That means there's still a lot of Australian homes and businesses on the fibre to the node network. And as I said in my earlier answer, we expect the fibre to the node network to serve Australians for the decade to come.
Mr. Rue, the service was launched in 2015, so your memory served you quite well, but this is not...
2015, thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Senator Pratt, you have the call.
I just want to confirm that $3 billion is contributed to the fibre to the node part of the investment announcement made.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to understand your question. Yes, that's right. I think it's 2.9 billion. It's 2.9 billion to build out fibre to 2 million, outside 2 million homes.
Okay.
It's
you've answered the question. If it's $3 billion for the fibre to the node, yes. Did you start looking at this in 2019 in terms of the on-demand model to do this? Earlier or later?
I'm pausing to make sure I answer your question accurately. I'm
told it was 2019. As
part of our obligation under the SOE, we always looked at upgrade paths, and we considered various upgrades, obviously, for all parts of the network. I believe it was during 2019 calendar year that we would have thought of that.
So the on-demand aspect of that was in terms of looking at how you get that scale up.
I believe it was, Senator, but I could be correct on that, but I believe it was, yes.
2 million premises will be passed by the residential fibre access network?
In 2023, yes.
Okay, that's terrific. And what's the total size of the fibre to the node copper footprint currently? So I'm assuming we know the fibre to the node and fibre to the basement footprint is about 4.7 in total, million in total.
Yeah, it's 4. Let's say it's 4.2. Catherine, is it 4.1 or 4.2?
Okay, so
I think it's
0.5 that's to build to basement.
It's 0.5 or 0.6. Catherine, do you recall? Is it 0.5 or 0.6 fibre to the basement?
I think it is 4.2.
4.2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The most recent ACCC wholesale market indicators show that there are only about 201,000 active connections on fibre to the building or basement. Why is that number so low, and what's the size of that footprint?
That sounds low to me, but Brad, do you Let me ask the team who are listening to confirm the numbers, Senator Pratt. But Brad, you may talk about fibre to the basement, though, because this is one of your big topics. So. Yeah.
So really, I mean, just to.
So firstly, can you confirm, is that 200,000 figure correct?
We're just sorry, Senator. The reason I play my iPad is I have a team listening who can actually hopefully answer. So I will look that up for you, but maybe Mr. Whitcomb can talk, if that's okay with you, Senator, around...
no, I'm happy to move on to the next question until that figure is confirmed and we can know what the size of the footprint is, if that's okay.
Yes, you asked though why is it so? Why is it low? I think you asked. It is lower than other technologies, so that's why I'm happy for Mr. Whitcomb to answer that.
Okay. You hadn't confirmed that it was low. So
it is low. Yeah, it is lower. Yes, that's correct. So, Mr. Brad, do you want to explain, Senator Pratt, why?
Yeah. So, as we gather the figures, we do see that the penetration rate, or the take-up rate, if you will, in FTTP sits around the mid 50%, so around 50 to 55%. It's about 55 to confirm that. Primarily, that's to do with the demographics of the people that are in what's mainly multi-dwelling units, so people that are more transient, students, etc., that come and go, rather than single-dwelling units.
Okay, I think that gives me enough context. And that's very helpful. So as I understand it, this fibre access network will pass roughly half the homes in the total fibre to the node copper footprint, which is the number
correct,
that we
Senator.
were referencing
Yes, that
before.
is correct. Yep.
How is the NBN going to determine which half you build into and which half you don't?
Yeah,
Do you have financial and engineering criteria, or will it be just demand driven? Is it like 1 order, 10 orders, 50 orders to
There's lots of criteria that we're actually currently working on.
Okay.
Catherine has attended tonight and has an answer. So a question. Can I ask Ms. Dyer to answer this? Catherine, can you answer how we're thinking around the selection of those premises, please?
Certainly. So we're looking at multiple factors where we will roll out the fibre deeper into the FTTN network. So in the parameters we're looking at are obviously customers in the area, the potential take-up in those areas. We're also looking at the underlying aspects of the network, so the pit and pipe and passive network that is available. We are looking at least construction costs to make sure that we use scarce capital as efficiently as possible. And we're also looking at ways that we can work very closely with the industry, our industry partners, to make sure that we're using resources effectively as we move the network forward.
Okay, so you'll start offering it as a new product in certain areas that meet engineering and expected and forecast demand criteria.
It'll be a range of, as Catherine said, it'll be engineering criteria, yes, it'll be cost criteria, it'll be demand-driven criteria. It'll also be where we see that there are an ability in a cost-effective way to reach people some areas which have a higher proportion of homes which are further from the node and therefore of lower speeds. So there's a range of factors, Senator, that we will go. Are
any of those on the record yet? And how do I ask you for the most up-to-date information about all of those criteria?
They're not on the record yet. No. If I can come, I'll try and help you in a second. We also said that we would look to over-index in regional areas. So whether it be half, but we said around about half. And we also said we build in every state and territory. So there's a bundle of criteria which we will put in a pot. In terms of, and we also want to talk to retailers as well to get the retailer view on all this. So what we plan to do is we will look to determine that criteria in the first quarter of next calendar year. And we will then, we'll find a way to announce where we're going. We haven't figured everything out yet, but we'll find a way to make it transparent.
Will those decisions, in terms of the engineering, financial and locational criteria, be made independent of government?
It's for NBN management to determine those areas.
Can government influence you on that determination, or do you make them independently?
You'd have to ask, obviously, the ministers directly that question, but I would expect we would make those decisions.
So if the government came to you and said this area should be a priority, or what you're asking people to pay is too expensive, what influence do they have on those decisions?
Well, we meet with our with our departmental colleagues, Richard and his team here, and with our minister as well on a fortnightly basis, and we have basically it's a conversation from us to the
Okay, so if the minister says to you, I want you to put this particular area because it's in this marginal seat into consideration, and a different community campaign says we've got bad service and we want us in, come and service us, how do you make your transparent decisions about where you go?
Senator, I think you're suggesting...
No, I'm just saying, is the minister just an input? Or
the minister wouldn't say, I want
I'm
you
not,
to put into this
I'm
marginal
just saying
seat. I think that's very
hypothetically
unfair.
there are state governments that chase you to say please come to this area. There are different local governments that put in cross subsidies to entice you. Like there's all sorts of different scenarios.
And I left that out as well. Understanding particular strategies of state governments is also important as well. So so for example, if we knew a innovation zone was going to be built, and that may influence where we see demand from our point of view. Senator, you're asking me a hypothetical question, but
I think I can probably move on that basis. I guess it's just a sense of you take advice from government and you take advice from other organisations.
Unfortunately, I'm in a job when I cannot tell you the number of people gives us advice, but what I can assure you is that I have going to Senator Kitchen's questions earlier. I mean, I have a corporate plan to deliver upon. I have a rate of return that Senator McMahon has asked me about. I have financial targets I need to resolve. I also have government policy I need to address.
I'm happy to move on. I know these are tricky things to balance. I just needed a clear idea Senator, about the extent to which you're independent.
My experience,
and I have that now.
My experience to date is that we have made those decisions.
Okay, thank you. And that's very good feedback to know that you've made those decisions independently, and clearly you get feedback from government because they tell you where there are trouble spots, etc.
And from community, and from community all the time.
So, can I ask, will NBN Co, is it going to be the fact that you will end up building into suburbs where the average household income is higher because there'll be a higher willingness to pay? I think the current average revenue per user, I think, is about 49.
No, the target is that.
What we say in the plan is 49.
We're currently at I think it was 45 at the end of last year.
Okay, so are you saying you can offer this product at 49?
Our expectation is that it's 44, not 45. Our expectation is that the demand for broadband services will continue to grow in Australia. We also know that when you look at the willingness to pay, and you also look at the affordability of broadband services in Australia, and you compare that internationally, that our broadband services stack up really well on an affordability index internationally. So we believe, Senator, that there will be greater demand for for internet service.
I think I've got enough context
we
to be
also
able to
think
ask
that will
you my next
substitute.
question.
That will probably substitute other spends that people have on other things. By the way.
So, Miss, when you say $49 average revenue per user for residential lines, how many residential access lines are there in the NBN network once we exclude business lines?
I'm going to answer that a slightly different way. I'm sorry, if you don't mind. But if you look at our corporate plan, we have 9 million connections at the end. So it depends on it. When you say business lines, you mean people connected, or do you mean able to connect? People connected, right? So we have 9 million connections at the end.
9 million NBN connections in total,
You're asking me how many of those are business. Brad, do you know off the top of your head?
No, Stephen, I'd be guessing if I was trying to get the precise number.
Let me see if I can find that for you, Senator, while you keep talking.
In the meantime, while you're having a look for that figure, perhaps I'm not sure which one of you is looking, but I'd be keen to know how to have explained to me how the on-demand model works and what speed will a customer need to order in order to get a fibre lead-in built.
Brad, do you want to take that? And I'll...
Yeah, so in terms of the speed, as Stephen was pointing out earlier, so we're not looking at this as a technology play as much as a customer experience play. So the customer would need to order a speed that they could not achieve on their existing technology. So that's the basic premise of this. So if somebody was on an FTTN, to take as an example, maybe the line is rated at 60 megabits per second. They're on a 50 plan. They prefer to be on a 100. Then they would be a candidate for an on-demand model because we couldn't deliver them the service that they wished on the current network. Now, conversely, if they were on an FTTN line that was able to deliver the 100, then if they ordered 100, they would just get that service over the FTTN network.
Okay.
There's about 1.2 million business, Senator, 7.8 million residential.
7.8 and 1.2. Thank you. Can I ask for how long a customer will need to stay on a plan? Have you looked at what their contract term would be? Your corporate plan must have relied on an assumption of some sort in order to get the figures that you have.
Yeah, we may have an assumption in there, but currently we don't. You know, the relationship we've got with retailers is customers can come on the network basically on a day's notice. So we don't have a lock-in for customers through the RSPs.
Okay, but if it's not in a contract, how long? You're assuming that everyone stays in indefinitely and doesn't drop back down again. Is that what the assumption in the plan is? If it's not assumed in the form of a contract?
I'd have to double check that, but that would be a reasonable expectation. If somebody's currently on a service and they've ordered a higher speed service, that they would stay on that higher speed. They may eventually move home or what have you, but typically when somebody upgrades their speed plan, they would stay on that plan. Okay,
so if you can confirm that that's what the assumption in your corporate plan is based on, I would be grateful. For FTTN users who can't achieve close to 50 megabit speeds, can they get a fibre lead-in built if they want to order a 50 megabit per second plan?
I think I'll try answering that, but there might be others that want to chime in. So we have, there's a number of ways that we can get an existing copper service up to that 50 megabits per second. One is a fairly technical thing working with Telstra on so-called coexistence, where their existing services might be a street light or something in the area causes interference on that line, and we do have a program in place with Telstra to sunset those legacy services. We can make full use of the copper. We also, within this plan, we've also got in-home wiring remediation, which we've also found can be a significant impediment. So those would be the things we'd look to first, because they are cheaper and easier and can deliver that great experience. Short of that, then the fibre lead-in would be the way to go.
And what about in instances where those options aren't available?
Again, so if the copper just isn't sufficient, we know that they've got good in-home wiring, there's not an interference issue with Telstra, then they would be a candidate, subject to whether we have built fibre into that area or not. So if we've built fibre down into the street, and then that would be an on-demand model.
Okay, so that would then become an option. And how many customers would you need to do that? If you've got...
Well, again, I think as both Catherine and Stephen described, there's a whole lot of variables that we would put into the mix before we would decide into which specific area to go into. Once we were into that area, I think then, if the customer looking to move up to a speed that they can't get on the existing network, then they would be a strong candidate for the fibre lead-in.
Okay. So will someone be able to switch back to lower speeds if their financial circumstances change and affordability took precedence?
Yeah, again, we don't have any lock-in with the retailers. That would be up to the retailer themselves. If they signed up a contract with the retailer may hold them to it, but that wouldn't be NBN's decision.
Okay, but surely you're going to have to price it so that government will want, from a consumer point of view, for you to be able to make it possible for retailers to meet fair contract terms so that someone can drop out out of a contract if they need to. Yeah. So can you explain what your intent is there?
The exact measures we put in place, we haven't fully written up yet, to be perfectly honest with you. But the broad answer, what Brad was saying, is that the desire here is to have the ability for consumers to on-demand order more than they can get today. Now, in terms of gaming of the system, and I'm not suggesting someone dropping down because of income is gaming of the system, by the way, but gaming of the system certainly is something that we'd have to make sure does not occur. But more broadly,
because once the connection's there, it's there, and other people will start to get the benefit.
That's correct. But we don't want to also put constraints on people to deal with to deal with might be a small number of edge cases. So we'll have to put those rules in place, Senator. But on a broad basis, both the intent from an economic point of view, but also our intent from our purpose of our company to build digital capability is to give as many consumers as possible the ability to order higher speeds than they can get today.
Okay, so how long will someone need to contract onto a higher speed to get a fibre lead-in built?
Well, as I think Brad said, firstly that will be a matter between the retailer, obviously, and the consumer. But at this stage, we haven't finalised, to use a bad term, the rules of engagement with the retailers. But on a broad basis, it will be on demand, and if people are going to order a higher speed, at that point, we would put a lead-in in.
Okay. Can I ask, will you impose any rules on retailers in relation to that?
If I could just refer to what I think it's the same answer.
Yeah, and that is that you're still considering what the rules are. Do you have a wholesale price for a gigabit plan and a wholesale price for a 100 megabit plan?
Yes,
and a 50 megabit plan?
Yes, we have a wholesale price. Brad knows them off the top of his head.
Great. Tell us what they are.
So right now we're at, for a 50 meg plan, we're at a $45 wholesale price. For the 100, it's $58.
Yeah.
And I believe we're at for the near gig, which we call our open fast, I believe we're 68, but let me just double check that. We've just started rolling that over the last couple of months.
I think you said 68. Thank you.
Yeah, let me just double check that.
But they all come with a certain level of capacity inclusions, by the way. So there's a little bit of complexity around it, but on a
I'd be interested to know the effective price for a gigabit plan once a retailer takes CVC allocations into account.
Well, what we see in the retail market today for gigabit is right around about $150. Some are a little bit lower than that, but that seems to be the current retail price, if that's what you're asking. But again, we don't set that.
But our wholesale is around about $80, so.
Yeah, so I was wrong with 68.
So that's the current effective price? Okay. So in terms of aspects of the recent corporate plan, as you've announced, on page 53 of the 2021 corporate plan, you've got a table that's got premises activated.
Yep.
All right, if I can just get through this technical bit, that'll help us finish more quickly overall.
Page 53, Senator, you were saying?
Yeah, page 53. Yep. In the 2020 corporate plan, the number of brownfield FTTP premises was stuck on 0.9 million through the forward forecast.
Yep.
And in the 2021 corporate plan, the number of brownfield FTTP premises moves from 0.9 in the financial year 2020 to 0.9 million and stays at 0.9 million in 2021, 0.9 million in 2022, and 1.1 million in 23, and 1.3 in 24.
Yeah.
So, of course, that's your forecast and things change. But I think what that shows is that 400,000 new fibre lead-ins are assumed to be built between now and 2024. And that's what the budget figures reflect. Is that correct?
It is. And I think I alluded to that earlier, Senator, as well. But so it's again, round numbers, 200,000 in 23 and a further 200,000 24 moving. So of those 2 million, they've been moving from it's a bit complicated because FTTN also grows for some reasons, but you can see FTTN drops in 23 to 24 by 200,000, and that flips up into FTTP brownfields.
Okay, so the number of fibre to the node activations drops by 200,000, as you just said.
That's right.
Fibre to the node activations peak at 3.2 million in 21. We're also 3.2 in 22, and 23, and then drop to 3 in 24.
Yes.
There are 400,000 fibre lead-ins being built in the brownfield footprint. So there's a difference of 200,000 there. So can I ask what makes up the 200,000 difference out to 2024?
There's 200,000, again rounded numbers, but 200,000 additional FTTN activations in 23. And that's really just the end of the 18-month period rolling off. And so if we didn't do this plan, let me answer it this way. If we didn't do this plan, Senator, you would have seen FTTN go from 3.2 to 3.4 in 23 and stay at 3.4 in 24. Okay. But because we've done this plan, you instead of the 3.4 in 23 and 24, you see 3.2 and then 3.
So can I just clarify? in terms of FTTN activations in 3.2, there aren't any additional activations.
There are in 23. If you hadn't have done this, if we hadn't have done if you assume we didn't do the FTT, the ability to buy FTTP lead-ins, let's assume that away for the moment.
Yeah.
You would have seen the FTTN would have gone 3.1, 3.2, 3.2, 3.4, 3.4. But because but now that 3.4 in 23 drops 200,000 and the 3.4 in 24 drops 400,000.
Yeah.
And that drops up into the FTTP line.
Okay, so I'm doing my best to follow you, but currently I'm not quite making sense of why then you'd have 200,000 new activations in 2023. The FTTN rollout was effectively complete in
No, there's still
2019.
There's still a period of some FTTN that Catherine's completing today,
Right.
and then there's an 18-month period of disconnection from there that flows into the 23 years. So, and there's also some rounding in here because you're point something. So
is there some way? Yeah, okay. Is there some way that we can dig into the detail to tidy up our understanding of those figures?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I can just there's 200,000 additional connections in 23, and then 200,000 comes out in 23. That's why you see no movement. That's the simple answer.
So, Senator Pratt, I'm going to go to Senator Van, and then I'm going to come back to the opposition again. Senator Van, you have the call.
Thank you, Chair. Hoping the voice holds up for the last half hour. Mr. Roux, how did the NBN traffic during COVID-19 lockdowns and restrictions, different places, etc., but how did it compare to the pre-COVID baseline?
All right. So two things happened. We saw a large growth of new customers on the FTTN. I'm talking about FTTN. We saw a large growth of new customers on the NBN network. So that by default brought a big growth in traffic. And then on top of that, we saw an increase in traffic more generally, particularly during busy hours, business hours, where we saw children at home being educated and obviously people working from home, and a very big spike in traffic during the day. We also saw a very significant growth in uplink, so people sending data up to the cloud. A very 75%, I think I said in my opening statement, of growth in uplink. So all in all, we saw the traffic on our network, I don't have the numbers in front of me, Senator, but exponentially grew from that period through a combination of the amount of data and the additional customers that came onto the network over that period. So it grew to as much as 15 terabits per second, and I don't know what it was in... It was around 10. It grew from about 10 to 15. In other words, 50% growth between February and today.
And that's amazing growth. Obviously, quite terrifying amount. But how is given that, how is the network held up in the face of that dramatically increased traffic?
The network, we're proud to say, has really stood up well through this period, very difficult period for Australia. As I said, as a combination of the way the industry rallied together, the way retailers rallied together, the support from the regulator, and obviously our team in putting extraordinary amount of capacity into the network almost overnight, and doing multiple different things. So I'd say an example is the footprint that Gavin's accountable for, fixed wireless, where sometimes you've got to put more capacity in, and that means that you've got to take the service away from people for a period of time. But Gavin innovated and started doing that at night time in a safe way, which is important. So no safety concerns. So that's going actually up towers and doing equipment changes and so on towers. So that's an example of where we made sure that we changed our processes almost overnight to ensure that the network was available the maximum amount of time for people. Not only were we supporting people, but the feedback we got in terms of the satisfaction of the network and of the network, ours and the retailer network, and the sentiment towards NBN changed significantly in that period, because we were built and we supported the nation at the time when it needed us most, frankly.
Thank you. And do you think that'll be just a transient short change, or do you think there'll be long-term changes in Australia's broadband demand?
I think we are seeing and are going to continue to see significant societal changes. I think the way that our children are being educated, but also the way that inevitably there'll be a retraining of many Australians, and they'll be able to access educational services the way that online, the way that people are starting to get comfortable going to their doctor or doing mental health therapy through video. The new businesses that will be created, and what Gavin was talking about earlier, the opportunity for people to live and work in regional Australia will change. I also think that the applications that will be developed will grow over time as new businesses and new innovation comes to play, and all of that will lead to more usage of internet services. Think about your home. Think about all the devices in your home that are going to communicate with each other, from security systems to entertainment systems to your items in the kitchen. All that is going to drive demand more and more and more innovation and create more opportunities for people. So, as I said earlier, I think there's a greater accountability now for utilities and for the telco sector, and that very much means there's more accountability for NBN, but also opportunities for us going forward. So I think, Senator, all of that is going to mean that demand of data is going to grow significantly over the next 4 to 5 years, and hence why I think now is the right time to start investing more into our network.
That makes great sense. Thank you for that. Just changing up a little, what is the SkyMaster Plus product that you launched in, I think it was March this year?
Yeah, thank you for raising that. We're very proud of this and we want people to know more about it. Gavin?
So SkyMaster Plus, the service that we launched, was actually, I think it was April Fool's on April the 1st, but it was no joke. It was it's been as transformational for the bush as the launch of SkyMaster in the first place. So what SkyMaster Plus does is, well, maybe take a step back. SkyMaster is a finite resource. We've got magnificent assets in the sky of 2 satellites, but it's a finite resource that needs to be shared fairly across the number of customers in regional and remote Australia. What that means is that when we treat our service as a dumb pipe, we don't understand what's on the network. We can't understand customers' usage and therefore ensure and optimise customer experience. We have to put in place pretty dumb rules as part of our legacy fair use policy on that product. So with consultation with some very helpful stakeholders in the bush, like Christy Sparrow for Better Internet and Regional Remote, the Regional Communications Coalition. And in fact, it was a recommendation that came through from a Joint Standing Committee, I think it was 2018, to explore opportunities to develop something that moves beyond a dumb pipe and enables us to understand traffic and treat it differently. So what we do with SkyMaster Plus is we don't meter traffic at all other than streaming video and virtual private network traffic. So that's streaming video being downloads of iView or Netflix, and VPN traffic being traffic that we don't know what's in it. What that means is customers who in the past might have been concerned about kids coming home from kids needing to go back home into their homesteads from the city during COVID lockdown. They're worried about whether they can do online learning. People going to the bush to run their businesses, concerned when they're on on Microsoft Teams or Zoom meetings that they're going to run out of bandwidth, when their phones are using Wi-Fi calling because there's no mobile coverage, that they won't have capacity to use their mobile phones for telephony. Sky Muster Plus unmeters all of that. So it enables regional Australians really to, for those critical applications, to have unmetered access. And we've seen significant growth in the number of customers, and we've seen, on average, significant increase in data usage. But it's growth in data usage that we can manage, because we do have that control of that enables us to deliver a great experience.
And thank you. And just to save Senator Mackenzie running in, we'll just make sure that got on record that it does help out our rural, regional and remote Australians that are working and learning from home.
Absolutely it does, in the most remote parts of this vast country.
Good. I can hear a stop running right now. What feedback have you had about Sky Muster Plus?
It's been really good. I mean, we measure our customer experience very carefully, and we've seen significant improvement in our customer experience scores for our Sky Muster satellite services. That frankly, they weren't good enough. They were noticeably worse than our fixed line services. And with Sky Muster Plus, we've seen our scores improve significantly to put Sky Muster right in the pack there.
So how many Sky Muster Plus plans have been ordered since it was launched?
So it's early days. There's about 10,000 customers now. We've needed to accelerate some investment to upgrade our Sky Muster Plus platform, but we're delighted to do it because it's delivering. We get such great feedback for it, and we feel like it's really delivering for remote Australia.
So what portion of your satellite connections then are currently Sky Muster Plus plans?
That'd be about 10%.
Okay.
But we're seeing that's now. We're seeing pretty much all of our growth, all of our new customers are coming on to Sky Muster Plus. And Mr. Rue mentioned the point. Your question's a salient one, because in some ways I worry that it's the best kept secret in regional Australia, and there's this capacity to deliver utility for the bush that people frankly don't know about. And NBN needs to cop it and say we need to do a better job of getting the message out there. Satellites copped a bad rap, and probably we probably deserve it from the times of interim satellite and some early kind of transition issues as we launched the Sky Muster product. But if you ask the erstwhile incredibly vocal stakeholders, and they always keep us honest, and they've been on my phone today telling me there was a niggle up in Alpha this afternoon. They are delighted with the product, and they say that we see people in remote Australia spending thousands of dollars on putting together bespoke communication solutions, when the answer is available with the significant investment that we're prepared to make with Sky Muster Plus.
And are you able to project the volume of those plans might grow over the next year or two, three, whatever?
I'm sorry, I just missed the question.
Are you able to project the volume of those plans, how that might grow?
Yeah, but
short answer, if you could please, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, but we're needing to revise our figures, Senator, because they're exceeding our expectations right now.
Maybe take that one on notice for me, if you would.
Yep, happy to.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Burkhardt.
Thanks very much, Mr. Rue. Do you know where King Island is?
King Island. That may be off good old Tasmania, Senator.
Absolutely. So the residents and businesses of King Island currently have access to the NBN via the Sky Muster satellite. And I'm sorry, Mr. Williams, going to burst your bubble now. In 2019, the King Island Council commissioned a review of King Island broadband, landline and mobile services and their economic, social and business impacts on the community. The Tech Project Group consultancy, which conducted the research and drafted the report, noted, and I quote, NBN Sky Muster is an expensive option for consumers. And in the view of users interviewed, it is not a particularly reliable service, nor does it offer fast internet. So many of the residents on the island maintained their ADSL internet connections because it was more reliable and faster, but the consultants were advised that Telstra was no longer supporting any new ADSL connections on many parts of the island. So of particular concern for King Island businesses, and there are nearly 300 registered businesses on the island, their concerns are long latency times on Sky Muster, the waiting times for the service to respond. 4G wireless provides around a 60 millisecond latency. On the Sky Muster service, the latency periods are regularly around 500 and 700 milliseconds, which is slow. It can't be used for business purposes. The MYOB cloud simply cannot function because of those latency problems. The main supermarket can't effectively use MYOB cloud, and that's obviously something that I think around 75% of small businesses operate on. The satellite also regularly goes down or is unavailable due to maintenance and has been out of commission for around 4 hours at a time. And of course, during COVID, these problems were further exacerbated with kids being homeschooled. I think one of the most compelling statistics from the 2016 census was that 22.6% of the island's population did not access internet from their dwelling, significantly higher than the Australian average. The gross regional product of King Island has consistently outperformed the Tasmanian average GRP in terms of annual growth for the past 18 years. So you can imagine how more productive they could be with a decent NBN service. They also have the 24th top golf course in the world and the second best in Australia. So my question is, does NBN Co have a plan to provide an upgraded, adequate and affordable NBN service to King Island?
Can I address the... I mean, I'd love to get the information on that survey, and I'd be happy when travel's available to go and speak to the community, because, frankly, some of those findings or assertions, such as 4-hour outages, they don't ring true to me, and I'm a Sky Muster user. Mr.
Williams, that's not an assertion out of the research. That is what the people on the island experience. I was there about 2 months ago, and I've got to say I travelled all over the island. I had lots of meetings with business groups, tourist groups, the chemists, everyone around the community I had meetings with, and the common thread that came up was the appalling service that they get through the NBN
I'd love to. I can put probes on services, do a deep study of King Island, and I'd love to do that, because this is a marvellous technology. Often I go to communities that can give me complaints about broadband access, and when I say, are you actually using Sky Muster? No, we're using it's our 4G service, or it's an ADSL service. The 500 milliseconds, the satellites are 36,000 kilometres away, and the light travels at the speed of light, and the round trip delay is about 500 milliseconds. Now that's a consequence of physics. There's a range of cloud services that aren't tuned to operate with that kind of latency, but a range are. What do we do about that? We can work with cloud service providers and frankly fix it. So there's plenty of accounting software services that work very well, and I have not the vendor that you've spoken about there, that hasn't crossed my desk.
So, Senator Kerr, can I ask you? You heard Gavin; he's happy to travel when we're able to. Obviously, for good reason, can't at the moment, but when we can,
I think it's
Gavin
only
will
about
go.
a week and a bit, and Tassie will be open. So
sorry,
it's about a week and a bit, and Tassie will be open. And
there you go. But in the meantime, can we work with your office to get a contact, and we can
Absolutely.
at least do a video or a conversation?
I'm sure the Mayor would be extremely happy.
No,
to
please,
talk to you.
and thanks for raising it. So.
I'm just going to race through some more technical questions before 11 and get through as much as I can. So Thank you, Mr. Rue, and Chair, for your indulgence.
It's all right.
The 2.9 billion that maps to the 200,000 FTTN premises being switched to fibre, is that right? Or does that map to 400,000 fibre lead-ins?
200,000 because it's to 2023.
Okay. How much lifting does the 700 million for business fibre do in that? How many new brownfield activations will that be?
It's not in that number. It's a separate set.
Okay. And, well, if you could just take on notice how many FTTN activations come with that 700 million in that separate number?
It's not in that number, Senator. So it's a different...
in that separate
yes.
number. That would be great. Peak funding hits 57 billion, and that assumes that 200... I think we confirmed 200,000 out of the 4 million homes in the FTTN footprint. Is that right?
I don't talk about peak funding as 57. I tried to have that conversation earlier. I think honestly, it's better to think about a bill as being completed, and then what is our level of borrowings or what is the investment we're making. Just on that assertion. But in terms of what is in our what's in our corporate plans financials is the 200,000, yes, that you described.
Okay, so I'm just trying to unpack this. As I would understand that looks like a cost of some $14,000 per premises.
No. What the 2.9 billion gives you is there's a little bit of home wiring, but let's ignore that for the moment. I think in that 2.9 you're talking about, so ignore that. But it's basically the build out of 2 million premises, fibre from the node to outside the street. And then there is the build of lead-ins of around about 200,000 lead-ins for people who choose higher speed tiers. That's the capital that's in the 2.9.
Okay, so can you explain to me the lead-ins? Because I'm assuming you've got lead customers that pay a bit more, and then you bring in more, and then you've still got everyone else on a parallel network.
Yeah. What you have is, and Catherine, jump in anytime you wish here. But what you have is that we currently have fibre from an exchange building to a node, right? That fibre there. Now, what we then do is build the fibre from that node outside the street of 2 million, outside the premise of 2 million premises. So,
did you say 200,000 or 2 million?
2 million.
Yeah.
So in the capital is fibre from that node to outside your home and 1.999 million other people's homes. So it stays there. Now you as a customer may choose to, through your retailer, to order a higher speed. Okay. At that point in time, we build the lead-in. So the capital, and that's why I say it's capital efficient, because the lead-in is built when the customer wants to pay for higher speed.
Thanks for clarifying it thus far.
Does that make sense? I'm sorry.
It does enough, and there's lots more that I'd like to learn about that. But can I ask, in the context of the 400,000 lead-ins figure that has also been spoken about, 400,000 premises being switched from FTTN to FTTP, or is it 200,000?
It's 400. So it depends upon where. So it's 200,000 to 2023, and it's 200,000 in 2024.
Okay, so
right.
So it's 200,000 plus 200,000 over time.
Correct.
Okay. And that's what's embedded in the whole model. Okay,
yes, it is.
Thank you.
And then we would expect more people will continue, obviously, in future years to keep keep.
So do you have a cost per premise?
We expect the lead-ins. The lead-ins we have modelled $1,500 a lead-in, and we've
Over what time?
per lead-in.
$1,500 per lead-in.
Yep.
And what's that based on?
That's based on what we have historically incurred, but we would obviously look to do better than that. But that's been the history. If you look back at the history of reporting cost per premise, you would see that.
Okay, so when you say $1,500, that's your expense versus what you're going to get back from.
No, that's our expense.
Retail.
So the cost per premise is the capital that we spend per
So
home.
you reckon each of these 200,000 to 400,000 lead-ins is going to be done for $1,500
Correct.
each?
Correct.
And what's the ARPU assumption embedded in your plan? Because it currently says...
We're expecting our current average, the average revenue per user is reported in the June 2020 results was $44. We expect that to grow to $49 over the course of this plan. Remember, a lot of the ARPU growth, Senator, comes in the future years because this is obviously building revenues in the future.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of financial impact from a revenue and ARPU point of view in this plan.
Okay, so I can't see in $1,500 per premise and 400,000 in total over that time how you need $57 billion to do that. So how do we get...
Why we're investing...
That's...
Why we're investing more money. Anyway, keep going.
No, I just want you to clarify that because clearly that's just your start-up for it because clearly that's not the whole country getting connected.
No,
does $57 billion connect the whole country?
No, Sandra. What we've done is built a network to everybody and now we're investing more. So what we are doing is investing a further... and a range of activities, $4.5 billion of network spend to generate future revenue streams. So what we are doing in this plan is uplifting the current approximately 20% of people who can get up to, in the fixed line network, who can get up to gigabit speeds, uplifting that to 3 and 4 in the fixed line network. That's what we're doing. Now, we're not expecting, to be clear, there's been some misunderstanding I saw in the media that we're expecting everybody to buy gig services. We're not. We're expecting people to buy higher speed services than they are today. So what this plan does is it lifts the capability of the network from 1 in 5 in a fixed line able to order up to gig to 3 and 4. That's what this does.
So in that context, how much additional revenue per month does your corporate plan assume will be achieved by someone who switched from FTTN to on-demand fibre?
So that, again, that will be in the outer years, but that will be going from what Brad. It will be a range of things from what Brad talked about. So if you have a customer on paying, say, $45 today for 50 services, they may pay. To us, that is, $45 to us. For 50, they may pay 58 or they may pay 68, depending on the higher speeds they want to us. So it will be a range of increases in average revenue per user, depending upon what happens.
And and that's what your corporate plan assumes. What's the blended average?
The blended average
in your corporate plan, because you've got a range of values there.
Our corporate plan goes to 2024, Senator. So beyond those years, there will be further growth in revenues from, we think, more and more people connecting to our service actually because of the demand for broadband and more people buying higher speed tiers and more business revenues. So, but that's outside of this corporate plan because that's beyond 2024. But we would expect...
So you've said just to be clear, you've said it goes from 58 to 68. I'm really looking for an average of what the customer, your corporate
over this plan...
Mr. Roux, could you perhaps take that on notice? It is 11 o'clock, which does draw us to a close.
Thank you.
So
Thank
can
you,
I
Mr.
say
Roux.
thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Roux, and members of the NBN for being here. That concludes the committee's examination of communications and arts outcomes of the infrastructure, transport, regional development communications portfolio. Senators are reminded that written questions on notice should be provided to the Secretariat by the close of business Thursday, the 29th of October. Minister, I thank you and officers for your attendance. I thank committee members, Secretariat staff, broadcast and Hansard. That concludes the hearing.
Thank you.